Hell there, and welcome to Sleeping Science Channel. Tonight, we will explore the gentle and serene world of bees. These remarkable insects fill our gardens with a soothing hum, pollinate the flowers we cherish, and create that golden honey that has sweetened human existence for millennia. Bees are builders, communicators, and dancers. They navigate by the sun, work in perfect harmony, and shape entire ecosystems with their tireless efforts. The world of bees is both ordinary and extraordinary, something we encounter almost every day, yet never fully understand. If you appreciate these quiet explorations, I invite you to subscribe or to share a simple thought in the comments. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is rest. Settle in comfortably and allow the calm hum of the bee world to carry you. Let us begin. A bee's wings beat over 200 times every second. When a bee passes near you, the soft buzzing sound you hear is the rapid beating of its wings. Every second, those delicate wings flutter more than 200 times, sometimes reaching 230 beats. This incredible speed creates the distinctive hum we associate with bees. The wings themselves are thin and translucent, stretched tight like the finest fabric. They are connected to powerful flight muscles in the bee's thorax that contract and relax at astonishing rates. This rapid movement generates enough lift to carry the bee's body through the air, even when laden with pollen or nectar. The frequency of the wing beats also changes depending on what the bee is doing. An empty bee flying freely has a different pitch than one heavily loaded with food returning to the hive. Some researchers believe bees can even control their wing frequency to communicate or to vibrate flowers in specific ways. That gentle buzz you hear on a summer afternoon is actually a complex mechanical achievement. A tiny motor running hundreds of times faster than your heartbeat. Bees perceive colors that humans cannot see. When a bee looks at a flower, it sees something entirely different from what we see. Bees can perceive ultraviolet light, a range of colors completely invisible to the human eye. Many flowers have evolved special patterns that appear only in ultraviolet, like landing strips guiding bees toward nectar and pollen. To us, a flower might appear uniformly yellow. To a bee, that same flower shows bold stripes, spots, or bullseyes in ultraviolet, pointing the way to its center. This hidden world of color exists all around us, painted on petals in patterns we will never directly witness. Bees also see the world slightly differently in other ways. They are less sensitive to red, which appears almost black to them, but they excel at seeing blues, greens, and ultraviolet. This specialized vision helps them identify the most rewarding flowers and navigate their environment with precision. The garden we see is beautiful, but the garden a bee sees is even more intricate, layered with secret signals written in invisible light. A single bee visits thousands of flowers in her lifetime. The life of a worker bee is one of constant motion and purpose. During her brief existence, typically only 5 to 6 weeks during the busy summer months. A single bee may visit thousands upon thousands of flowers. Some estimates suggest a forager bee might visit up to 2,000 flowers in a single day, moving from blossom to blossom in an endless search for nectar and pollen. Over her lifetime, this adds up to tens of thousands of individual flower visits. Each visit is quick, lasting only seconds, as she extends her tongue to sip nectar or brushes against pollen-laden anthers. This tireless work is essential not just for the bee's colony, but for the plants themselves. With each landing, she transfers pollen from flower to flower, enabling plants to reproduce and set seed. The humble bee, small and easily overlooked, is actually one of nature's most prolific workers. Her brief life is spent in service to both her colony and the flowering world around her. Honeybees communicate through an intricate dance. One of the most remarkable behaviors in the animal kingdom is the honeybee waggle dance. When a forager bee discovers a rich source of nectar or pollen, she returns to the hive and performs an elaborate dance to tell her sisters exactly where to find it. The dance is surprisingly precise. She moves in a figure-8 pattern, waggling her abdomen during the straight portion of the dance. The angle of this waggle run, relative to vertical, indicates the direction of the food source relative to the sun. The duration of the waggle tells other bees how far away it is. Longer waggles mean a more distant location. Through this dance, performed in the darkness of the hive, bees can communicate locations up to several kilometers away with remarkable accuracy. Other bees watch the dance, touching the dancer with their antennae, and then fly out to find the exact location described. This waggle dance is a true language, a symbolic form of communication that allows bees to share complex spatial information without sounds or images. Bees have been making honey for over 100 million years. Long before humans walked the earth, bees were already crafting honey. Fossil evidence suggests that bees have existed for at least 100 million years, evolving alongside flowering plants during the Cretaceous period. The oldest known bee fossil, preserved in amber from Myanmar, dates back approximately 100 million years. This ancient bee, trapped in tree resin, already showed many of the features we see in modern bees, including branched hairs for collecting pollen. Honey production likely evolved as a way for bees to store food during times when flowers weren't blooming. By converting nectar into honey, a more concentrated and stable form of sugar, bees created a food source that could last through winter or periods of scarcity. This innovation allowed bee colonies to grow larger and survive in a wider range of environments. When you taste honey today, you are experiencing something that has remained fundamentally unchanged for millions of years. A sweet golden substance connecting us to an ancient past when dinosaurs still roamed and the world was profoundly different. A hive can house up to 80,000 bees working as one. A honeybee colony is like a single superorganism. thousands of individuals working together with such coordination that they function as one. During the height of summer, a thriving hive can contain 60,000 to 80,000 bees, sometimes even more. The vast majority are female worker bees, sterile daughters of the queen, who perform all the labor of the colony. There are also a few hundred male drones during breeding season, and one single queen who lays all the eggs. Despite this massive population, the hive operates with remarkable efficiency. There's no central control, no overseer giving orders. Instead, each bee follows simple rules based on her age and the needs she perceives around her. Younger bees tend to work inside the hive, cleaning cells, feeding larvae, and building comb. Older bees venture outside as foragers. Through chemical signals, physical interactions, and perhaps even the vibrations of their wings, these thousands of individuals coordinate their actions. The result is a living system that maintains stable temperatures, produces honey, raises young, and defends itself as if it were a single thinking creature. Beeswax is secreted from special glands on the bee's abdomen. The beautiful hexagonal cells of a honeycomb aren't made from gathered materials, but from the bees themselves. Young worker bees, typically between 12 and 18 days old, produce tiny flakes of beeswax from special glands on the underside of their abdomen. These wax scales are incredibly thin, almost translucent, and the bee must manipulate them with her legs and mandibles to make them useful. She chews the wax, mixing it with saliva and sometimes pollen until it becomes pliable. Then, she carefully positions it to build or repair the comb. It takes approximately 8 lb of honey consumed by the colony to produce a single pound of beeswax. This makes wax production metabolically expensive. So, bees are quite economical with it. They build their comb in precise hexagonal patterns because this shape uses the least amount of wax while providing the maximum storage space and structural strength. The hexagon is a marvel of natural engineering, and the fact that bees instinctively build in this pattern without blueprints or instruction is one of the many quiet wonders of their existence. Some bees sleep inside flowers overnight, while honeybees return to their hive each evening. Many solitary bee species have a different nighttime routine. These bees don't have a permanent home or colony. Instead, they live independently, and when darkness falls, they seek shelter wherever they can find it. Many solitary bees spend the night sleeping inside flowers. They crawl deep into a blossom as the sun sets, gripping the petals or anthers with their mandibles and settling in for the night. There they remain, motionless and safe from the cooling air until morning warmth returns. Some flowers even seem to accommodate these tiny guests, providing a perfect shape and shelter. Photographers have captured enchanting images of bees tucked inside flowers, their bodies dusted with pollen, absolutely still in peaceful slumber. These bees enter a sleep-like state where their body temperature drops and their metabolism slows. When dawn arrives, they warm up gradually, often waiting for the sun to heat their bodies before they can fly again. The image of a bee sleeping inside a flower, cradled by soft petals, is one of nature's gentlest scenes. Bees can recognize human faces. It might seem surprising, but bees have been shown to recognize and remember human faces. In laboratory experiments, researchers trained bees to associate certain human face images with sugar water rewards. The bees learned to distinguish between different faces and could remember them even after several days. What makes this remarkable is that bees have tiny brains with fewer than 1 million neurons compared to the billions in a human brain. Yet they can process complex visual information and form memories. They do this not by understanding faces the way we do, but by recognizing them as patterns of features, much like how they recognize flower patterns. In the wild, this ability helps bees learn and remember the locations of good food sources, the appearance of different flowers, and even landmarks around their territory. The fact that they can extend this pattern recognition to human faces shows just how sophisticated their small brains truly are. When a bee hovers near you, seemingly curious, she might actually be studying your face, filing away the pattern for future reference. A queen bee can lay over 2,000 eggs in a single day. At the center of every honeybee colony is the queen, a bee larger and longer than her daughters, with a singular purpose. She is the mother of everyone in the hive, and her productivity is astonishing. During the peak of spring and summer, a healthy queen can lay between 1,500 and 2,000 eggs per day, sometimes even more. She does this day after day, week after week, for months. Each egg is carefully placed in a prepared wax cell, positioned precisely so it will develop properly. Worker bees attend to her constantly, feeding her royal jelly, grooming her, and removing her waste. The queen's body is a living factory, converting food into eggs at a rate that seems almost impossible. Over her lifetime, which can span 3 to 5 years, a single queen might lay more than 1 million eggs. This extraordinary reproductive capacity ensures the colony remains strong and populous. Without her constant egg laying, the hive would dwindle and eventually die. She is not a ruler who commands, but rather the living heart that sustains the entire colony. Honey never spoils if stored properly. Honey is one of nature's perfect foods, capable of lasting indefinitely without spoiling. Archaeologists have discovered pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs, sealed for over 3,000 years, that were still perfectly edible. The reasons for honey's incredible longevity lie in its unique chemistry. Honey is a highly concentrated sugar solution with very low water content, typically around 17 to 18%. In such an environment, bacteria and microorganisms cannot survive because the water they need for life is unavailable. Honey is also naturally acidic, with a pH between 3.2 and 4.5, which inhibits microbial growth. Additionally, bees add an enzyme called glucose oxidase to honey, which produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide, giving honey mild antibacterial properties. When properly stored in a sealed container, protected from moisture, honey can remain stable forever. It may crystallize over time, forming sugar crystals that give it a grainy texture. But this doesn't mean it has spoiled. Simply warming the honey gently will return it to its smooth liquid state. This eternal sweetness, crafted by bees, is a gift that transcends time itself. Bees make propolis from tree resin to seal their hives. Beyond honey and wax, bees produce another remarkable substance called propolis. Worker bees collect sticky resin from tree buds, sap flows, and other botanical sources, then carry it back to the hive in the pollen baskets on their legs. Inside the hive, they mix this resin with beeswax and saliva to create propolis, a sticky brownish substance with incredible properties. Bees use propolis to seal cracks and gaps in their hive, essentially weatherproofing their home. They also use it to smooth out rough surfaces, reduce the size of the hive entrance, and even to entomb invaders that are too large to remove, such as mice or beetles that die inside the hive. But propolis is more than just glue. It has powerful antimicrobial properties that help keep the hive clean and protect against diseases. Throughout history, humans have recognized propolis's medicinal qualities, using it to treat wounds, soothe sore throats, and boost immunity. The bees, though, discovered these benefits millions of years before we did, creating a natural defense system from the trees around them. Worker bees are all female and live about 6 weeks in summer. The workers you see visiting flowers are all female bees, daughters of the queen, who perform every task necessary for the colony's survival. During the busy summer months, their lives are intense and brief. A worker bee, born in spring or summer, typically lives only about 5 to 6 weeks. Her short life is divided into stages based on age. In her first days, she cleans cells in the comb, preparing them for new eggs or honey storage. Around day 6, she begins feeding larvae, mixing pollen and honey into nutritious food. By day 12, she starts producing wax and building comb. After that, she graduates to guarding the hive entrance, inspecting incoming bees, and defending against intruders. Finally, around day 21, she becomes a forager, flying out to gather nectar, pollen, water, or resin. This final phase is the most dangerous, and many bees don't return from their foraging flights, lost to predators, weather, or exhaustion. By the time her wings are tattered and worn, her life is nearly over. In winter, however, workers born in autumn can live much longer, sometimes 5 or 6 months, because they remain inside the hive in a semi-dormant state, conserving energy until spring returns. Drones exist only to mate with a queen and then die. Male bees, called drones, live very different lives from their sisters. They don't gather food, build comb, or defend the hive. Their sole purpose is reproduction. Drones are larger than workers, but smaller than the queen, with big eyes that meet at the top of their heads, adapted for spotting queens in flight. They're raised in slightly larger cells and fed generously by worker bees. During warm afternoons, drones leave the hive and fly to special areas called drone congregation areas, where drones from many hives gather in the air waiting for a virgin queen to fly through. If a drone successfully mates with a queen, the act is fatal for him. His reproductive organs are torn from his body during mating, and he falls to the ground and dies. Those drones who don't mate continue to live in the hive through summer, fed by the workers. But when autumn arrives and resources become scarce, worker bees forcibly expel all drones from the hive. Unable to feed themselves and unwelcome in other colonies, these males die of cold and starvation. It seems harsh, but colonies cannot afford to feed non-working members through winter. The drones' lives are thus entirely defined by the brief possibility of reproduction. Bees warm their hive by vibrating their flight muscles. Temperature regulation is critical for a bee colony. Developing larvae and pupae need a stable temperature of around 33 to 36 degrees C to develop properly. Too cold and they'll die or develop abnormally. Too hot and the wax comb will melt. Bees have evolved remarkable ways to maintain this stability. When the hive is too cold, worker bees cluster together and vibrate their powerful flight muscles without actually moving their wings. This generates heat through muscular activity, much like shivering in mammals. Bees near the center of the cluster stay warmest, while those on the outside gradually rotate inward, so everyone gets a chance to warm up. On cold winter nights, the cluster tightens and the bees work together to maintain a warm core temperature, even when the air outside drops below freezing. This collective thermoregulation is so effective that tropical honeybee species have successfully colonized temperate regions where winters are harsh. The hive, through the coordinated effort of thousands of individuals, becomes a warm refuge, a bubble of maintained climate that protects the precious brood and the sleeping colony through the coldest months. When too hot, bees cool the hive by fanning and collecting water. During hot weather, keeping the hive cool becomes the priority. If the temperature rises too high, the wax comb can soften and collapse, and the brood can overheat and die. Bees employ several strategies to cool their home. First, they position themselves at the hive entrance and rapidly fan their wings, creating airflow that pulls hot air out and draws cooler air in. Sometimes long chains of bees form throughout the hive, all fanning in coordination to create ventilation currents. But bees also use evaporative cooling, the same principle behind sweating. Forager bees make special trips to collect water, which they bring back to the hive and deposit on the comb. Other bees spread this water in thin films over the surface of cells and across the brood. As house bees fan their wings, the water evaporates, absorbing heat and cooling the hive. On extremely hot days, you might see bees clustered outside the hive entrance in a behavior called bearding, where they hang in masses outside to reduce crowding and allow better air circulation inside. Through these coordinated efforts, the colony can maintain a stable internal temperature even when the outside air is sweltering. Bees are essential pollinators for about 1/3 of human food crops. While bees produce honey, their greatest gift to humanity might actually be pollination. Approximately 1/3 of the food we eat depends directly or indirectly on pollination by bees. This includes most fruits, many vegetables, nuts, and even crops fed to livestock. Apples, almonds, blueberries, cherries, cucumbers, melons, and countless other foods rely on bees to transfer pollen from flower to flower. Without this service, many plants couldn't reproduce or set fruit. The economic value of bee pollination is estimated at tens of billions of dollars annually worldwide, though the true value is immeasurable because it sustains ecosystems and food security. Managed honeybees are often transported to farms in hives to pollinate crops. But wild bees, including bumblebees and solitary species, are also crucial pollinators. Some crops are even better pollinated by native bees than by honeybees. The quiet work of bees going about their business of collecting food inadvertently supports the entire foundation of agriculture and natural plant reproduction. Every bite of an apple or spoonful of almond butter carries with it the invisible labor of bees. A forager bee carries half her body weight in pollen or nectar. When a bee returns to the hive, she's often carrying a load that seems impossible for such a small creature. A forager bee can carry nectar weighing about half her body weight in her honey stomach, a special internal sac separate from her digestive stomach. Watching a heavily laden bee struggle into the air is like watching a tiny aircraft overloaded with cargo. Her flight is slower, more labored, and the pitch of her wing beats drops as she works harder to stay aloft. For pollen, she packs it into structures on her hind legs called corbiculae, or pollen baskets. These are concave areas surrounded by stiff hairs where she mixes pollen with a bit of nectar to make it sticky. The resulting pollen balls can be almost as large as her legs themselves, bright yellow, orange, or even purple, depending on the flowers she visited. Carrying this much weight requires tremendous strength and energy. The bee must fly back to the hive, sometimes over a kilometer or more, laden with treasure. Her tiny body, no bigger than a fingernail, becomes a cargo vessel, bringing home the sustenance that will feed the thousands of mouths waiting inside. Bees navigate using the sun as a compass. How does a bee find her way back to the hive after flying through a complex landscape? One of the main tools bees use for navigation is the sun. Bees have an internal clock that tells them the time of day, and they use this along with the sun's position to determine direction. Even when the sun isn't directly visible, bees can detect the polarization pattern of light in the sky, which acts like a natural compass. This allows them to navigate on partly cloudy days. As the sun moves across the sky throughout the day, bees adjust their understanding of direction accordingly. When a forager performs her waggle dance to communicate a food source location, she's actually translating the angle relative to the sun into an angle relative to the vertical comb surface inside the dark hive. This ability to use the sun as a fixed reference point, combined with landmarks and scent memory, gives bees a sophisticated navigation system. Research has shown that bees can even learn complex routes, taking shortcuts or avoiding obstacles. For a creature with a brain the size of a grass seed, this navigational ability is nothing short of extraordinary. Bees sleep and even dream inside the hive. Like all animals, bees need rest. Research has shown that honeybees do sleep, though their sleep is quite different from ours. Bees show periods of inactivity where their antennae droop, their body temperature drops slightly, and they become less responsive to disturbances. Younger bees sleep inside the cells of the comb, often in clusters, while older bees tend to sleep in quieter areas of the hive. A bee's sleep isn't a single long period like human sleep, but rather many short naps throughout the day and night. Studies have even suggested that bees might experience something like dreaming. Researchers observed that sleeping bees sometimes flex their legs and antennae in ways that might mirror the waggle dance, as if rehearsing what they've learned while foraging. Sleep deprivation affects bees much as it does humans. Tired bees are less accurate in their waggle dances and less efficient at foraging. When they finally get rest, they sleep more deeply as if catching up. The hive at night is not silent. There's a gentle, continuous hum of activity. But amid the work, many bees are sleeping, suspended in their own tiny dreams, resting before another day of tireless labor. Bumblebees can fly in cooler weather than honeybees, while honeybees prefer warm, sunny days for foraging. Their fuzzy cousins, the bumblebees, are built for cooler conditions. Bumblebees have much thicker, denser hair covering their robust bodies, which acts as insulation. They can also generate heat by vibrating their flight muscles, warming themselves up before takeoff. This allows bumblebees to forage in cooler weather, earlier in the morning, and later into autumn than honeybees. In regions with short summers or cool climates, bumblebees are often the primary pollinators. They're essential for crops like tomatoes, which require a special type of pollination called buzz pollination. The bumblebee grabs the flower and vibrates her flight muscles at a specific frequency, shaking pollen loose from the anthers. Their cold tolerance and this unique pollination technique make bumblebees irreplaceable in many ecosystems and agricultural systems. Unlike honeybees, most bumblebee species live in much smaller colonies, often only a few hundred individuals. At the end of summer, the colony dies off except for new queens, who hibernate alone through winter to start new colonies in spring. Watching a bumblebee visiting flowers on a chilly spring morning, when honeybees are still huddled in their hive, reminds us that nature has equipped different species for different niches. Some bees nest underground in burrows. Not all bees live in hives hanging from trees or kept in wooden boxes by beekeepers. Many solitary bee species nest underground, excavating tunnels and chambers in soil. These ground nesting bees include mining bees, digger bees, and sweat bees, among others. The female digs a tunnel straight down, sometimes as deep as a foot or more, then creates side chambers branching off the main shaft. In each chamber, she provisions a mixture of pollen and nectar, lays a single egg, and seals the chamber. The larva develops alone, feeding on the provision left for it, pupating, and eventually emerging as an adult bee. Some ground-nesting species create aggregations where hundreds or thousands of females nest in close proximity, turning an area of bare ground into a bustling bee city. These bees are harmless and rarely sting, as they have no hive to defend. You might walk past their nests without noticing, perhaps just seeing small mounds of excavated soil with holes in the center. These underground nurseries are vital to ecosystems, and the bees that create them are among our most important native pollinators. Their hidden world beneath our feet is quiet, but essential. Mason bees use mud to build nests in hollow stems. Mason bees are gentle, solitary bees, named for their construction habits. They don't dig in soil, but instead nest in pre-existing holes, often in hollow plant stems, beetle borings in wood, or purpose-built bee hotels that humans provide. The female mason bee searches for a suitable cavity, then begins her work. She flies to a source of mud and carefully collects it, carrying it back to the nest site. Using the mud, she constructs a back wall at the end of the cavity. Then she gathers pollen and nectar, packing it into the chamber to create a food provision. She lays an egg on top of this food, then builds a mud wall to seal off that cell. She repeats this process, creating a linear series of cells like apartments in a row, until the cavity is filled. The final cell gets an especially thick mud cap to protect the entire nest. Inside each cell, the larva hatches, eats its provision, spins a cocoon, and pupates. They remain in these sealed chambers through winter, emerging as adults the following spring. Mason bees are exceptionally efficient pollinators, and just a few hundred mason bees can pollinate an entire orchard. Their gentle temperament and ease of management have made them favorites among gardeners. Leafcutter bees line their nests with precisely cut leaf pieces. Leafcutter bees are meticulous artisans. These solitary bees nest in cavities much like mason bees, but instead of mud, they use pieces of leaves to construct their nest cells. Watching a leafcutter bee work is mesmerizing. She lands on a leaf, cuts a neat circular or oval piece with her mandibles, then carries it back to her nest cavity. The precision is remarkable. Each piece is cut to exact dimensions. She lines the walls of the cavity with overlapping leaf pieces, creating a leafy tube. At the back, she curves leaf pieces to form a thimble-shaped cell, waterproof and secure. She provisions this cell with pollen and nectar, lays an egg, then caps it with more leaf pieces. She continues building cells in sequence until the cavity is full. The leaf pieces come from roses, lilacs, ash, and other plants. If you've ever noticed nearly perfect circles cut from your rose leaves, a leafcutter bee was likely the culprit. These leaf removals don't harm the plants significantly, and the benefits these bees provide through pollination far outweigh any minor aesthetic damage. The finished nest is a work of art, a green and brown mosaic hidden inside a hollow stem. Carpenter bees excavate tunnels in wood to raise their young. Carpenter bees are large, robust bees, often mistaken for bumblebees. But while bumblebees nest in abandoned rodent burrows or grass clumps, carpenter bees have a different approach. They excavate tunnels directly into wood. The female uses her powerful mandibles to chew through wood fibers, creating a perfectly round entrance hole and a tunnel that can extend a foot or more. The work is slow and methodical, taking days or even weeks. As she chews, she pushes the sawdust out of the hole, often leaving telltale piles below. Once the tunnel is complete, she divides it into cells using chewed wood pulp. Each cell receives a provision of pollen and nectar and a single egg. The larvae develop inside these wooden chambers, safe from most predators. Carpenter bees prefer weathered, unpainted wood, and they often reuse and expand the same tunnels year after year, creating increasingly complex galleries. While they can cause minor structural damage if they nest in large numbers, they rarely threaten the integrity of buildings. Male carpenter bees are territorial and buzz aggressively near their nesting sites, but they lack stingers and are harmless. The females do have stingers, but are docile and sting only when handled roughly. The sight of a carpenter bee hovering near a wooden beam, inspecting her work, is a reminder that even in the hardest materials, life finds a way to make a home. Bees taste with their feet and tongues. Bees experience the world very differently than humans do. When a bee lands on a flower, she doesn't just see it or smell it. She tastes it with her feet. Bees have chemoreceptors on their tarsi, the segments at the tips of their legs. When they touch a surface, they can immediately determine if it contains sugars or other chemicals. This allows bees to quickly assess whether a flower is worth investigating further. If a flower has already been visited and depleted of nectar, a bee can taste this just by landing on it and move on without wasting time probing the flower. Bees also taste with their tongues, which makes sense for lapping up nectar. But the foot tasting ability is particularly useful for speed and efficiency. This multimodal sensing, combining sight, smell, and taste all at once, allows bees to make rapid decisions in their search for food. For a bee, the world is a landscape of flavors beneath her feet. Every surface offering information, every landing a tiny taste test of sweetness or emptiness. A bee's brain is about the size of a grass seed. Despite their small size, bees are capable of learning, memory, and complex decision-making. A honeybee's brain weighs only about 1 mg and contains fewer than 1 million neurons. For comparison, a human brain has about 86 billion neurons. Yet, bees can learn to associate colors, shapes, and scents with food rewards. They can count up to 4 or 5, understand the concept of 0, and even grasp simple symbolic representations. Researchers have taught bees to navigate mazes, solve puzzles for sugar rewards, and distinguish between different artistic styles in paintings. This cognitive ability, with such minimal neural hardware is astonishing. It suggests that intelligence doesn't necessarily require a large brain, but rather efficient organization and connectivity. The bee's brain is divided into regions specialized for different tasks: visual processing, memory, and motor control, much like vertebrate brains. Everything a bee knows, from flower recognition to the waggle dance, from nest architecture to navigation, is stored and processed in this grass seed-sized organ. It's a reminder that complexity and sophistication can be packed into the tiniest spaces. Bees have 5 eyes, 3 simple and 2 compound. When you look closely at a bee's head, you might notice what seems like just 2 large eyes, but bees actually have 5 eyes total. The 2 large ones are compound eyes, each made up of thousands of tiny hexagonal lenses called ommatidia. Honeybees have about 6,000 to 7,000 ommatidia per eye. Each ommatidium captures a small part of the bee's visual field, and the combined input creates a mosaic-like image. This gives bees excellent motion detection and a wide field of view, though their visual acuity is much lower than ours. On top of the bee's head are 3 smaller, simple eyes called ocelli, arranged in a triangle. These ocelli don't form detailed images, but are sensitive to light intensity and help the bee maintain orientation relative to the horizon and detect changes in light levels. The ocelli are especially useful for stabilizing flight. Together, these 5 eyes give bees a rich visual experience, allowing them to navigate 3-dimensional space, track moving objects, and respond quickly to changes in their environment, all processed through that tiny brain. Bees produce royal jelly to raise queens. Royal jelly is one of the most mysterious substances produced by bees. It's a creamy white secretion made by young worker bees from glands in their heads. All bee larvae are fed royal jelly for the first few days of life, but most are then switched to a diet of pollen and honey. However, larvae destined to become queens receive royal jelly exclusively throughout their entire development. This rich diet triggers a different developmental pathway, causing the larva to grow much larger and develop into a queen rather than a worker. The queen bee is genetically identical to worker bees, but the difference in diet during the larval stage creates completely different adult forms. Royal jelly contains proteins, sugars, lipids, vitamins, and bioactive compounds. Scientists still don't fully understand all its properties, but it clearly has powerful effects. Humans have long prized royal jelly as a health supplement, though its benefits for people are less clear than its dramatic effects on bee larvae. The fact that diet alone can determine whether a bee becomes a short-lived worker or a long-lived queen is one of nature's most fascinating examples of developmental plasticity. A new queen kills her rivals before they emerge. The birth of a queen bee is often accompanied by violence. When a colony needs a new queen, either because the old one has died or because the colony is preparing to swarm, worker bees create several queen cells. These are larger, peanut-shaped cells that hang vertically from the comb. Inside each, a larva is fed royal jelly and develops into a queen. But a colony can only have one queen at a time. The first virgin queen to emerge faces a stark choice. She immediately searches the hive for other developing queens. When she finds a sealed queen cell, she chews a small hole in its side and stings the developing queen inside, killing her before she can emerge. If two queens happen to emerge at the same time, they will fight to the death, stinging each other repeatedly until one prevails. The winner becomes the colony's queen. This seems brutal, but it prevents the chaos that would result from multiple queens trying to lead the same colony. The surviving queen will soon take her mating flight, and if successful, will lead the colony for years. But her reign begins with this ruthless elimination of potential rivals, a reminder that nature's beauty often masks harsh necessity. Swarming is how honeybee colonies reproduce. When a honeybee colony grows strong and crowded, it prepares to split in two through a process called swarming. The old queen and about half the worker bees leave the hive together, clustering on a nearby tree branch or other surface, while scout bees search for a new home. The sight of a swarm can be alarming. Thousands of bees clustered in a living ball, buzzing softly. But swarming bees are remarkably gentle. They've gorged themselves with honey before leaving, making them too full and lethargic to be aggressive. They have no hive to defend, no brood to protect. Scout bees fly out in all directions, searching for suitable cavities, hollow trees, empty hives, or other spaces. When a scout finds a promising site, she returns and performs a waggle dance to describe its location and quality. Other scouts visit the sites and dance for them as well. Eventually, the swarm reaches a consensus, with more and more bees dancing for the best location. Then, the entire swarm takes flight together, a cloud of thousands of bees, and moves to their new home. Back at the original hive, a new queen emerges, mates, and takes over the colony. Through swarming, one colony becomes two, ensuring the species' survival. Scout bees decide on new nest sites through democratic process. The way a swarm chooses its new home is one of the most remarkable examples of collective decision-making in nature. Scout bees, usually older, experienced foragers, fly out from the swarm to search for potential nest sites. When a scout finds a promising cavity, she inspects it carefully, assessing its size, entrance opening, height off the ground, and protection from the elements. If she's impressed, she flies back to the swarm and performs a waggle dance, advertising the site. The enthusiasm of her dance reflects the quality of the site. Better sites inspire longer, more vigorous dances. Other scouts observe these dances, visit the advertised sites themselves, and if they agree, they dance for the same location. Over hours or days, scouts advocate for different sites through dancing. Gradually, a consensus emerges. When enough scouts are dancing for the same site, a threshold is reached, and the decision is made. The swarm then takes flight. No single bee is in charge. The queen doesn't decide. Instead, Through this democratic process of proposal, inspection, and debate through dance, the swarm collectively chooses the best available option. It's a system that balances individual assessment with collective wisdom. Bees from different species have different tongue lengths. Not all bees are built the same. One significant difference among bee species is the length of their tongue. Honeybees have moderately long tongues, while bumblebees can have quite long tongues, and some solitary bees have very short tongues. Tongue length determines which flowers a bee can access. Flowers with deep, tubular corollas, like honeysuckle or sage, can only be reached by long-tongued bees. Short-tongued bees feed on flowers with exposed or shallow nectaries, like daisies or yarrow. This variation creates specialization and reduces competition. Different bee species visit different flowers, and each flower type is pollinated by the bees best suited to it. Some clever bumblebees have even learned to cheat. When faced with a flower too deep for their tongue, they bite a hole near the base of the flower and steal nectar without entering through the proper opening, bypassing pollination entirely. This tongue length diversity is one reason why having many different bee species is so important for ecosystems. Different flowers need different pollinators, and biodiversity among bees ensures that all flowers get the service they need. Honeybees perform a tremble dance when resources are overwhelming. The waggle dance is famous, but bees have other dances too. When foragers return with large amounts of nectar and find that receiver bees are too busy to unload them quickly, they perform a tremble dance. This is a shaking, trembling movement where the bee walks slowly across the comb, pausing and trembling her body. The dance signals to other bees that more workers are needed to process incoming nectar. Young bees respond by switching tasks, moving from brood care or other duties to become receiver bees. They take the nectar from returning foragers, chew it, add enzymes, and deposit it in cells to begin the honey-making process. The tremble dance helps the colony adjust its workforce dynamically in response to changing conditions. When the influx of nectar slows, the dance stops, and bees return to other tasks. It's one of many ways the hive self-organizes, using signals and behaviors to allocate labor without any central planning. The colony adapts in real-time, shifting resources where they're needed most, all through the simple language of movement and response. Bees can sting only once and die, but wasps can sting repeatedly. Many people confuse bees and wasps, but their stinging behavior reveals an important difference. Honeybees and most other bees have barbed stingers. When a bee stings human skin or another mammal, the barbs catch in the elastic tissue. As the bee tries to fly away, the stinger tears from her abdomen along with the venom sac and parts of her digestive system. The detached stinger continues pumping venom into the wound even after the bee has flown away. This makes the sting more effective as a defense, but it's fatal for the bee. She'll die within minutes from the injury. This sacrifice is worth it for the colony, especially when defending against large threats. Wasps, however, have smooth stingers that slide in and out without catching. They can sting multiple times without injury to themselves. This difference reflects their lifestyles. Honeybees live in large colonies with stored food worth defending, so sacrificial defense makes sense. Most wasps are solitary or live in smaller colonies and need their stingers for hunting prey, not just defense. For bees, stinging is a last resort, a one-time weapon used only when the colony's survival is at stake. Bee venom contains compounds used in medicine. Though painful, bee venom is actually a complex cocktail of compounds with fascinating properties. It contains melatonin, a peptide that causes pain and inflammation, as well as enzymes, histamines, and other proteins. But beyond causing stings, bee venom has attracted medical interest. Apitherapy, the use of bee products for health, includes controlled bee sting therapy for conditions like arthritis and multiple sclerosis. Some studies suggest that bee venom components may have anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties, though research is ongoing and results are mixed. The venom's compounds are also being studied for potential anti-cancer properties and antimicrobial effects. In some cultures, intentional bee stings have been used traditionally to treat various ailments. Whether or not these treatments prove broadly effective, it's remarkable that a substance evolved purely for defense might also hold therapeutic value. The bee's sting, while feared, contains within it molecules that could one day contribute to healing. It's a reminder that nature's chemical arsenal, developed over millions of years, often holds secrets we're only beginning to understand. Bees see the world about 300 times faster than humans. Time perception varies among species, and bees experience time very differently than we do. While humans see about 60 images per second as continuous motion, bees can perceive about 300 images per second. This means their visual system processes information much faster than ours. What appears to us as a smooth, continuous movement, a waving hand, or a flying bird, would appear to a bee as a series of distinct, crisp images. This rapid vision helps bees navigate while flying at high speeds, avoiding obstacles and tracking flowers swaying in the wind. It's one reason bees are so hard to swat. By the time your hand moves toward them, they've seen it coming with plenty of time to react and dodge. This faster perception of time also aids in their complex aerial maneuvers and their ability to land precisely on small, moving targets like flowers bobbing in the breeze. When a bee zips past your ear in a blur, remember that from her perspective, you're the one moving in slow motion. The world she inhabits operates on a different temporal scale, one where a second contains hundreds of distinct moments. Flowers have evolved colors and patterns specifically to attract bees. The relationship between bees and flowers is one of nature's most beautiful partnerships. Over millions of years, flowering plants and bees have co-evolved, each shaping the other. Flowers produce nectar and pollen to attract bees, and in return, bees provide pollination services. Many flower characteristics exist specifically because of bees. Bright colors, especially blues, purples, and yellows, stand out strongly to bee vision. The ultraviolet patterns, invisible to us, guide bees to nectar sources like runway lights. Flowers have even evolved shapes that accommodate bee bodies, with landing platforms, nectar guides, and structures that ensure pollen rubs onto the bee's body in just the right places. Some flowers bloom at times of day when bees are most active, scents advertised to bees from a distance, and some flowers warm themselves in the sun, providing a cozy spot for bees to rest. This intricate coordination between plant and pollinator has resulted in extraordinary diversity. Nearly 90% of wild flowering plants depend on animal pollination, and bees are the most important pollinators. When you see a bee visiting a flower, you're witnessing a relationship refined over countless generations, a dialogue between species written in color, shape, and scent. Some flowers trap bees temporarily to ensure pollination, while most flowers offer an open exchange, nectar and pollen for pollination. Some plants have evolved more manipulative strategies. Certain orchids and other flowers temporarily trap visiting bees to ensure pollination. The bee enters the flower, attracted by scent or visual signals, but once inside, the way out is blocked or obscured. The flower is designed so the bee can only escape by squeezing through a narrow passage that forces her to contact the flower's reproductive parts. As she pushes through, pollen adheres to her body. When she finally escapes and visits another flower of the same species, she inadvertently delivers the pollen exactly where it's needed. The bee isn't harmed, just delayed and annoyed, and she gets her nectar reward eventually. Some tropical orchids keep bees trapped for hours before releasing them. From the flower's perspective, this ensures pollination happens reliably. From the bee's perspective, it's an inconvenient but ultimately harmless detour. These trap flowers are a reminder that the relationship between bees and flowers isn't always simple cooperation. It's also competition, manipulation, and evolutionary arms races, all playing out in the quiet interactions happening in every garden and meadow. Bees have been revered across cultures for thousands of years. Throughout human history, bees have held special significance. Ancient Egyptians kept bees and harvested honey, and the bee was a symbol of Lower Egypt. Egyptian hieroglyphs show beekeeping practices dating back over 4,000 years. In Greek mythology, bees were associated with the goddess Artemis, and honey was considered the food of the gods. The Greeks believed that souls could take the form of bees, and that poets received inspiration from bees. In Hinduism, the bee is associated with Vishnu, Krishna, and Kama, often depicted as bees or surrounded by them. Celtic cultures saw bees as messengers between our world and the spirit world. In Christianity, bees symbolize industriousness, cooperation, and community. The medieval Catholic Church valued beeswax for candles used in religious ceremonies. Bees appear in heraldry, literature, and art across cultures as symbols of hard work, organization, and sweetness. Napoleon Bonaparte used the bee as his emblem, seeing it as representing immortality and resurrection. Even today, bees inspire us with their dedication and their essential role in nature. They're more than insects. They're symbols woven into the fabric of human culture, respected and celebrated for millennia. Honey is made by bees, evaporating water from nectar. Honey making is an alchemical process performed by bees. It begins when a forager bee sips nectar from flowers, storing it in her honey stomach. Back at the hive, she regurgitates the nectar and passes it to a house bee. This bee chews the nectar, adding enzymes from her salivary glands. These enzymes, particularly invertase, begin breaking down complex sugars into simpler ones. The bee deposits the nectar into a cell, but it's still quite watery, around 70 to 80% water. Over the next days, house bees repeatedly visit the cell, drawing up the liquid, chewing it, and redepositing it. Meanwhile, they fan their wings vigorously over the open cells, creating airflow that evaporates water from the nectar. Gradually, the water content drops to around 18%, at which point the substance has transformed into honey, thick, sweet, and shelf-stable. The bees then cap the cell with a thin layer of wax, sealing the honey for storage. This whole process requires tremendous collective effort. It takes nectar from approximately 2 million flowers to produce 1 lb of honey, along with countless hours of bee labor. What we spread on toast is the result of an intricate chain of work, a concentrated essence of flowers and bee dedication. Different flowers produce honey with distinct flavors. Not all honey tastes the same. The flowers bees visit determine the color, flavor, and aroma of the honey. Orange blossom honey is light and citrusy. Buckwheat honey is dark and robust. Clover honey is mild and sweet. Lavender honey has a floral complexity. Bees don't actually choose to make specific types of honey. Beekeepers simply place hives near large expanses of particular flowers during blooming, and the bees naturally gather from the most abundant and rewarding sources nearby. If a hive is surrounded by orange groves in bloom, the resulting honey will predominantly reflect orange blossoms. Some honeys are so distinctive, they've gained protected status, like Manuka honey from New Zealand, produced when bees visit the native Manuka bush. Tasting different honeys is like tasting the landscape where the bees foraged, a sweet map of flowers and geography. Each spoonful carries the essence of specific blossoms, filtered through the work of bees, concentrated and preserved. For those who appreciate honey, exploring different varieties is a way to travel through gardens and meadows, experiencing the diversity of the botanical world, one sweet taste at a time. Honeycomb is built in perfect hexagons without blueprints or rulers. The honeycomb is one of nature's most elegant structures. Bees build their comb from beeswax in a precise hexagonal pattern. Each cell is a 6-sided tube, and the entire structure fits together with mathematical perfection. Why hexagons? This shape tessellates perfectly, meaning cells fit together with no wasted space. It also uses the least amount of wax for the maximum storage volume and provides excellent structural strength. Scientists and mathematicians have studied honeycomb for centuries, fascinated by its efficiency. The bees achieve this without planning, measuring tools, or understanding geometry. They simply follow instinctive behaviors. Each bee adds wax in a certain way, guided by the temperature of the wax, the shape of her body, and interactions with nearby bees. The collective result is this stunning architecture. Interestingly, bees initially build the cells as rough circles. The warmth of the hive and the surface tension of the soft wax cause the circles to naturally pull into hexagons as they cool and harden. Nature and physics work together, guided by the bee's instincts, to create a structure so perfect that engineers and architects still study it for inspiration. The comb is a masterpiece of natural engineering, built by tiny insects working without a master plan. Bees have different castes, determined by diet and care during development. A honeybee colony is divided into castes, each with specific roles. The queen is the reproductive female, workers are sterile females, and drones are males. What's remarkable is that queens and workers are genetically identical. A female egg could become either one. The determining factor is diet. All female larvae receive royal jelly for the first few days, but worker larvae are then switched to a mixture of pollen and honey called bee bread. Queen larvae continue receiving royal jelly exclusively. This difference in nutrition activates different genes, leading to radically different body forms. Queens are larger, have longer abdomens, different mouth parts, and fully developed reproductive systems. Workers are smaller, have pollen baskets and wax glands that queens lack, and have underdeveloped ovaries. This phenomenon, where environment rather than genetics determines development, is called phenotypic plasticity. It means the hive can produce exactly what it needs. When a colony needs a new queen, workers can convert existing young worker larvae into queen larvae simply by changing their diet. This flexibility ensures the colony's survival, even if the unexpected happens. Identity in the bee world is not fixed at birth, but shaped by the care and feeding one receives. Bees perform a shaking signal to recruit help defending the hive. Communication in the hive extends beyond dancing. Bees have many ways to signal each other, and one important signal is the shaking signal or vibration signal. When a bee perceives a threat to the hive, such as a predator or intruder, she may grab another bee and shake her rapidly by gripping her with her legs and vibrating intensely for a second or two. This vigorous shaking alerts the recipient to danger and recruits her to help defend the hive. The shaken bee becomes more alert and aggressive, ready to sting if necessary. The signal can spread through the colony like a wave, with shaken bees shaking others, quickly mobilizing defenders. Researchers have found that bees also use shaking signals in other contexts, possibly to stimulate activity or communicate urgent needs. The hive is not silent inside. It's full of touches, vibrations, chemical signals, and sounds. Bees are constantly talking to each other in ways we're only beginning to decode. This physical communication, body to body, creates a living network where information flows rapidly through thousands of individuals, allowing the colony to respond swiftly to challenges and opportunities. Stingless bees exist in tropical regions and produce different honey. While honeybees and bumblebees are familiar to many people in temperate climates, there's a whole group of bees that most people have never heard of: stingless bees. These bees, found primarily in tropical and subtropical regions, belong to the tribe Meliponini. There are over 500 species, and as their name suggests, they lack functional stingers. Instead, they defend their nests by biting with their mandibles. Stingless bees are highly social, living in colonies that can number in the thousands. They build elaborate nests with complex architecture, often using a mixture of wax and plant resins called cerumen. Their honey is different from honeybee honey, often more liquid, with unique flavors ranging from sweet to sour. Indigenous peoples in Central and South America, Asia, Africa, and Australia have kept stingless bees for centuries, harvesting their honey for food and medicine. The honey of stingless bees is often more expensive than honeybee honey and is prized for its distinctive taste and supposed medicinal properties. These bees are also important pollinators in tropical ecosystems, where they visit flowers that honeybees might ignore. The world of bees is far more diverse than most people realize, with countless species adapted to every environment and lifestyle imaginable. Bees can sense electric fields around flowers. Flowers aren't just visual and aromatic signals. They also carry electrical signatures. Flowers typically have a slight negative electric charge, while bees, flying through the air, accumulate a positive charge through friction. When a bee approaches a flower, the difference in charge creates a weak electric field that the bee can sense. Research has shown that bees can detect and respond to these electric fields. They use this sense to determine whether a flower has been recently visited. When a bee lands on a flower, she temporarily alters its electric field. Other bees arriving shortly after can sense this change and may skip that flower, knowing it's likely been depleted. This electrical sense adds another layer to the bee's sensory world, one completely invisible and imperceptible to humans. It's a reminder that bees experience their environment in ways we can barely imagine. They navigate a world of colors we can't see, scents more complex than we can distinguish, tastes in their feet, and now electric fields invisible to us. Every flower is not just a visual target, but a multisensory beacon, broadcasting on channels we didn't even know existed. The oldest known bee fossil is 100 million years old. Bees are ancient. The oldest definitive bee fossil was discovered in Myanmar, preserved in amber from the early Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. This tiny bee, named Melitosfex burmensis, already displayed many features characteristic of modern bees, including branched body hairs for collecting pollen. Its discovery pushed back the known origin of bees significantly. Before this fossil, scientists had estimated that bees evolved around 70 million years ago. The amber-encased bee suggests they appeared even earlier, evolving from wasp-like ancestors as flowering plants diversified. This means bees and flowers co-evolved over vast stretches of time, shaping each other in a botanical and zoological partnership that has lasted through countless climatic shifts, extinction events, and continental movements. When you see a bee today, you're looking at a design refined over 100 million years, an ancient form that has proven remarkably successful. Bees have outlasted the dinosaurs and witnessed the rise of mammals, birds, and eventually humans. They were here long before us, and if we care for them properly, will be here long after. Some bee species are solitary and live alone their entire lives. When most people think of bees, they imagine hives and colonies, thousands of individuals working together. But in fact, the majority of bee species are solitary. These bees don't live in colonies, don't have queens, and don't make honey. A solitary female bee builds her own nest, provisions it, lays her eggs, and then moves on. She never sees her offspring. Each female is independent, a self-sufficient unit, handling all the tasks that would be divided among thousands of workers in a social hive. Solitary bees include mason bees, leafcutter bees, mining bees, and many others. They nest in the ground, in hollow stems, in wood, or in any cavity they can find. Without a colony to defend, they're generally non-aggressive and rarely sting. Solitary bees are critically important pollinators, often more efficient on a per-bee basis than honeybees. Some crops are better pollinated by solitary bees. These bees lead quiet, independent lives, each one a small miracle of self-sufficiency. While social bees get most of the attention, solitary bees remind us that cooperation isn't the only successful strategy. Independence, too, has its rewards. Bees recognize and prefer certain flowers based on learned experience. Bees aren't born knowing which flowers are best. They learn through experience. Young bees venture out and sample various flowers. If a flower provides a good reward of nectar or pollen, the bee remembers its appearance, scent, shape, and even the time of day it was most rewarding. Some flowers are more generous at certain times, opening more, producing nectar only during specific hours. Bees learn these patterns and adjust their foraging schedules accordingly. They also develop flower constancy, a tendency to visit the same species of flower repeatedly during a single foraging trip. This benefits both bee and plant. The bee becomes efficient at handling that flower type, and the plant is more likely to receive pollen from the same species, which is necessary for reproduction. Bees can even learn to associate arbitrary signals with rewards in experimental settings. Researchers have trained bees to respond to colors, patterns, and even solve simple puzzles for sugar water. This learning ability is remarkable for an insect. and shows that bees are not mindless automatons, but flexible, intelligent creatures capable of adapting to a changing world. Every bee is an individual with her own learned experiences, preferences, and memories. Honeybees are not native to the Americas. It might surprise many Americans to learn that the familiar honeybee is not native to North or South America. European colonists brought honeybees to the Americas starting in the early 1600s. The species Apis mellifera is originally from Europe, Africa, and Asia. Before the arrival of European honeybees, the Americas had thousands of native bee species, mostly solitary or small colony bumblebees and stingless bees. These native bees were, and still are, the primary pollinators of native plants. Honeybees have thrived in the Americas, sometimes competing with native bees for resources. While they're valuable for agriculture and honey production, their dominance can sometimes reduce resources for native species. In recent years, there's been growing recognition of the importance of native bees and efforts to support their populations. Native plants, nesting habitat, and reduced pesticide use all benefit native bees. The landscape we see today, with honeybees visiting flowers, is a relatively recent development in ecological terms. For millions of years, American plants were pollinated by a diverse array of native bees, many of which are still here, quietly doing the work they've always done. Bees contribute to biodiversity and ecosystem stability. Beyond pollinating crops, bees play a crucial role in maintaining wild ecosystems. It's estimated that about 75 to 95% of flowering plants rely on animal pollinators, and bees are the most important group. By pollinating wildflowers, bees enable these plants to produce seeds and reproduce, sustaining plant populations. These plants, in turn, provide food and habitat for countless other organisms, insects, birds, and mammals. Without bees, many plant species would decline or disappear, triggering cascading effects through food webs. Fewer plants mean less food for herbivores, fewer seeds for birds, less cover for wildlife. Bees help maintain the diversity and resilience of ecosystems. Healthy ecosystems with high biodiversity are better able to withstand disturbances like droughts, diseases, or climate changes. By supporting plant reproduction, bees help keep these systems robust and varied. The small buzzing bee carries an outsized ecological importance. Her work connects plants to animals, sunlight to sustenance, and holds together the intricate web of life that sustains the natural world. Protecting bees means protecting the ecosystems we all depend on. Pesticides and habitat loss threaten many bee populations. In recent decades, bee populations worldwide have faced significant challenges. Honeybee colonies have experienced mysterious collapses, and many wild bee species are declining or going extinct. The causes are complex and interconnected. Pesticides, particularly neonicotinoids, are highly toxic to bees, even in small amounts. These chemicals can impair bee navigation, reduce foraging efficiency, weaken immune systems, and cause death. Habitat loss is another major threat. As natural landscapes are converted to agriculture, urban areas, or monocultures, bees lose the diverse sources of flowers and nesting sites they need. Intensive farming practices often eliminate wildflowers, hedgerows, and other features that support bees. Climate change alters the timing of flower blooms and bee emergence, disrupting the synchrony between pollinators and plants. Diseases and parasites, such as the varroa mite, also devastate bee colonies. These factors often interact. A bee weakened by pesticide exposure is more vulnerable to disease. A bee with limited food due to habitat loss may not survive the winter. The plight of bees is a warning about the broader health of our environment. Addressing these threats requires changes in agricultural practices, thoughtful urban planning, and a commitment to creating landscapes where bees and other wildlife can thrive. Planting native wildflowers helps support native bee populations. One of the simplest and most effective ways individuals can help bees is by planting flowers. Native wildflowers are particularly valuable because they've co-evolved with local bee species and provide the specific resources those bees need. Native plants often bloom at times that match the life cycles of native bees. They offer the right shapes, colors, and nectar chemistry. By planting a variety of native flowers that bloom from early spring through late fall, you can provide a continuous food source for bees throughout the season. Even a small garden, balcony container, or patch of lawn converted to wildflowers can make a difference. Avoid using pesticides, especially insecticides, which can harm bees even when applied to ornamental plants. Leaving some areas of bare soil helps ground nesting bees. Leaving dead stems and wood provides habitat for cavity nesting species. Creating bee habitat is not just about helping bees. It's about rebuilding connections with nature, witnessing the beauty of pollinators at work, and participating in the health of local ecosystems. Every flower planted is a small gesture of care, a way of saying that these tiny creatures matter, and that we're willing to share our space with them. Bee hotels provide nesting sites for solitary bees. Solitary bees need places to nest, and many are quite particular about their nesting sites. Bee hotels are simple structures that provide artificial nesting cavities for these bees. They're usually made from blocks of wood with holes drilled to various diameters, bundles of hollow stems like bamboo or reeds, or other materials that create tube-shaped cavities. Different species prefer different hole sizes, generally ranging from 2 to 10 in diameter. The holes should be smooth inside and closed at one end, about 15 cm deep. Placing a bee hotel in a sunny spot, sheltered from rain, facing southeast or south, increases the chances bees will use it. In spring and summer, you might see bees entering the holes, bringing in pollen and nectar, and eventually sealing the holes with mud, leaves, or plant material. Inside, their larvae develop safely through summer, pupating in late summer or fall, and emerging the following spring. Watching a bee hotel in action is deeply satisfying. You can observe different species, each with their own style and materials. Bee hotels don't solve all the problems bees face, but they offer a small, tangible way to support native pollinators and bring the secret lives of bees a little closer. Bees produce sounds by vibrating their flight muscles in various ways. Bees are not silent creatures. They produce a range of sounds through different mechanisms, mostly involving their flight muscles. The familiar buzzing sound of a flying bee comes from her wings beating rapidly. But bees can also vibrate their muscles without moving their wings, creating sounds and vibrations used for communication. The piping sound made by virgin queens is produced by vibrating the thoracic muscles while pressing against the comb. This creates a distinctive high-pitched tone that can travel through the hive. Worker bees also produce a variety of hums, buzzes, and vibrations that convey information. The stop signal is a brief vibrational pulse that tells a dancing bee to stop. Buzz pollination, used by bumblebees and other bees, is a loud, low-frequency vibration that shakes pollen loose from flowers. Researchers have recorded and analyzed these sounds, finding that they carry surprisingly detailed information. The frequency, duration, and pattern of vibrations can indicate a bee's state, her intentions, or convey specific messages. The hive is a symphony of subtle sounds, a constant hum and vibration that the bees use to coordinate their complex society. Bees groom themselves meticulously to keep sensors clean. A bee's antennae, eyes, and body hairs are crucial sensors, and keeping them clean is essential. Bees are fastidious groomers, spending significant time each day cleaning themselves. Using specialized combs and brushes on their legs, they scrape and brush pollen, dust, and debris from their bodies. The forelegs have a notch with stiff hairs that forms an antenna cleaner. A bee will draw each antenna through this groove, cleaning it thoroughly. The middle and hind legs brush the thorax, abdomen, and wings. Pollen collected on the body is scraped, moistened with nectar, and packed into the pollen baskets on the hind legs. This grooming serves multiple purposes. It keeps sensory organs functional, ensures the bee can fly efficiently, and collects pollen for transport. It's also a way to distribute chemical signals across the body. Watching a bee groom is mesmerizing. She moves with deliberate care, addressing each part of her body in turn, like a tiny, methodical creature engaged in a private ritual. This self-care is not vanity. It's survival. A bee with clogged antennae or obscured eyes cannot forage effectively. Cleanliness for a bee is literally life or death. Beekeepers use smoke to calm bees during hive inspections. Anyone who has seen a beekeeper at work knows they often use smoke. But why does smoke calm bees? The reason is rooted in the bee's natural instincts. When bees detect smoke, they instinctively respond as if there's a fire. Their priority shifts immediately to survival. They begin gorging themselves with honey, filling their stomachs in case they need to abandon the hive and swarm to a new location. bees with full stomachs are less likely to sting, partly because they're focused on preparing to leave, partly because a full abdomen makes it harder to bend and deploy the stinger. Smoke also masks alarm pheromones that guard bees' release when they perceive a threat. These pheromones normally signal other bees to attack, but smoke obscures the chemical signal, preventing a defensive response from escalating. This allows beekeepers to open hives, inspect frames, and perform necessary tasks with minimal disturbance to the colony. The smoke doesn't harm the bees, and they return to normal behavior soon after the smoke dissipates. It's a gentle way to work with bees, using their own instincts to create a calmer interaction. The relationship between humans and bees, mediated by smoke, has enabled beekeeping for thousands of years. Honeybees were used to detect landmines and explosives. Bees' incredible sense of smell has led to some unusual applications. Researchers have trained honeybees to detect explosives, including landmines. Bees can be conditioned to associate the scent of specific chemicals, like TNT or other explosive compounds, with food rewards. After training, the bees will extend their proboscis, their tongue, when they smell these chemicals, even in tiny concentrations. In field trials, trained bees have been released in areas suspected of containing landmines. Observers watch the bees' behavior, nodding where they show the conditioned response. This can help identify contaminated areas. Bees have also been trained to detect other substances, from drugs to disease markers. Their olfactory abilities rival or exceed those of trained dogs, and they can be conditioned quickly and inexpensively. While using bees for landmine detection has practical challenges, it demonstrates their remarkable sensory capabilities and the potential for insects to assist in solving human problems. The humble bee, often taken for granted, carries within her tiny frame abilities that exceed our own in certain ways. Her nose is a marvel, capable of detecting and distinguishing scents at concentrations we cannot imagine. Varroa mites are parasitic threats to honeybee colonies. One of the most serious threats facing honeybee colonies worldwide is a tiny parasite called the varroa mite. These reddish-brown mites, about the size of a pinhead, feed on the bodily fluids of bee larvae and adults. A female mite enters a brood cell just before it's capped and lays eggs. Her offspring feed on the developing bee larva, weakening it. The adult bee emerges. She often has deformed wings, a shortened abdomen, and a compromised immune system. The mites also transmit viruses that can devastate colonies. Heavy infestations can kill entire hives, especially if left untreated over winter. Varroa mites originally parasitized the Asian honeybee, Apis cerana, which has natural defenses, like grooming behavior that removes mites. But when varroa spread to the western honeybee, Apis mellifera, these bees had no such defenses. The mites have spread globally, and managing them is a constant challenge for beekeepers. Treatments range from chemical miticides to organic acids to breeding bees with mite-resistant traits. The fight against varroa is ongoing. a reminder that bees face not only environmental threats, but biological ones, tiny enemies that exploit their life cycle and test the resilience of entire colonies. Bees have inspired technology and engineering designs. Engineers and scientists often look to nature for inspiration, and bees have provided many insights. The hexagonal structure of honeycomb has inspired lightweight, strong materials used in aerospace, automotive design, and construction. Honeycomb panels are used in aircraft wings and satellites because they combine minimal weight with maximum strength. The waggle dance has inspired algorithms for swarm robotics, where multiple robots communicate and coordinate without central control. The way bee colonies make collective decisions has informed computer science, optimization problems, and artificial intelligence. Bees' efficient flight and navigation have inspired drone design and autonomous vehicle algorithms. Even the way bees thermoregulate has influenced building climate control systems. Nature has spent millions of years solving problems through evolution, and bees are master problem solvers. By studying how they build, communicate, navigate, and organize, humans can develop better technologies. Biomimicry, the practice of learning from and imitating nature's strategies, sees bees as a wellspring of innovation. Every time a bee builds a cell or performs a dance, she's demonstrating principles that might one day improve human technology. The small bee, going about her work, becomes a teacher across the boundaries of species. Bees can learn and pass information to other bees culturally. Culture isn't unique to humans. Bees demonstrate forms of social learning and cultural transmission of information. When a bee discovers a particularly good foraging location or a useful technique, she can teach other bees through demonstration and the waggle dance. Researchers have observed that certain behaviors can spread through a colony as bees learn from one another. For example, if one bee learns to access a difficult food source, others may watch and learn the technique. Some studies suggest bees can learn from watching other bees perform tasks, a form of observational learning. Within a colony, there can be different traditions or preferences that are maintained across generations of bees, not through genetics, but through learning and communication. This cultural transmission allows colonies to adapt more quickly to changing environments than would be possible through genetic evolution alone. It means that bee colonies can have unique personalities and specializations based on their collective learned experiences. The hive becomes not just a genetic lineage, but a community with its own accumulated wisdom, passed from older bees to younger ones through the generations. The queen's pheromones maintain order and unity in the colony. The queen doesn't rule through commands, but through chemistry. She produces a complex blend of pheromones, chemical signals that spread throughout the hive. The most important is queen mandibular pheromone, secreted from glands near her mouth. Worker bees constantly groom and attend the queen, and in doing so, they pick up these pheromones. They then spread them throughout the colony through physical contact and trophallaxis, the sharing of food. These pheromones have profound effects. They suppress the development of ovaries in worker bees, ensuring they remain sterile. They prevent workers from raising new queens. They promote cohesion and cooperation within the colony. When a queen is healthy and producing strong pheromones, the colony operates smoothly. But if a queen is old, diseased, or absent, her pheromone production drops. Workers quickly sense this. Within hours, they may begin building queen cells to raise a replacement. The queen's chemical signature is the invisible glue holding the colony together, a constant reassurance that all is well, that the hive has a reproductive center. Her scent permeates every corner, every bee, creating a unified identity that says, "We are one colony, one family, one purpose." Bees perform hygienic behaviors to prevent disease spread. Honeybee colonies face constant threats from diseases and parasites. To combat these, bees have evolved impressive hygienic behaviors. Worker bees regularly inspect brood cells, checking the larvae and pupae for signs of disease or parasites. If they detect something wrong, sick larvae, dead pupae, or parasites, like varroa mites, they uncap the cell and remove the contents, dragging diseased or dead brood out of the hive and discarding them far from the entrance. This hygienic behavior prevents diseases from spreading. Some bee strains are more hygienic than others, removing diseased brood more quickly and thoroughly. Beekeepers have bred for this trait because hygienic colonies are healthier and require less intervention. Bees also coat the inside of their hive with propolis, which has antimicrobial properties, creating a sort of chemical defense against pathogens. They ventilate the hive to control humidity, which could otherwise promote mold and bacterial growth. The hive is a clean environment not by accident, but by constant vigilance and effort. Bees are constantly maintaining, inspecting, and sanitizing their home. This collective hygiene is one reason bee colonies can thrive despite being densely crowded, with thousands of individuals living in close quarters. Bees communicate alarm through pheromones when threatened. When a bee stings, she releases an alarm pheromone that smells faintly like bananas, specifically like the compound isomyl acetate. This chemical signal alerts other bees to danger and recruits them to defend the hive. The pheromone marks the threat, effectively painting a chemical target that tells other bees where to attack. This is why disturbing a hive can quickly escalate as more and more bees respond to the alarm signal. Guard bees at the hive entrance are particularly sensitive to threats and will release alarm pheromone if they encounter predators, intruders, or suspicious movements. Once released, the pheromone can linger, which is why beekeepers sometimes wait a while after a hive disturbance before reopening it. Smoke, as mentioned earlier, can mask this alarm pheromone, which is one reason it helps calm bees. The alarm pheromone system is highly effective for colony defense. It allows a few guard bees to rapidly mobilize hundreds or thousands of defenders when the colony is truly threatened. It's a chemical communication system that has evolved to protect the hive's most valuable resources: the queen, the brood, and the stored honey that represents countless hours of labor. Bees perform orientation flights to memorize landmarks. When a young bee is ready to leave the hive for the first time, she doesn't just fly off. She performs orientation flights, hovering near the hive entrance, flying in gradually widening circles and arcs, always keeping the hive in view. She's memorizing the location of her home. Bees use visual landmarks, the shape of the hive entrance, surrounding vegetation, buildings, fences, trees, to create a mental map. They also note the sun's position and the magnetic field orientation. These flights can last several minutes, and you can recognize them by the bees hovering back and forth movements, clearly studying her surroundings. Once she has memorized her home's location, she can venture farther to forage, confident she'll find her way back. This navigation system is surprisingly robust. Experiments have shown that bees can recognize their hive even if it's moved a short distance, and they can navigate complex environments with multiple similar landmarks. The young bee's orientation flights are her first lessons in the wider world, a careful study before she commits to the dangerous work of foraging. It's a moment of transition from the safe darkness of the hive to the bright, open skies beyond, and she prepares for it with methodical care. Bees are ectothermic and rely on external heat to warm their bodies. Unlike mammals and birds, bees cannot internally regulate their body temperature at rest. They are ectothermic, meaning their body temperature is largely determined by their environment. On cold mornings, bees are sluggish, unable to fly until their muscles reach a certain temperature, around 30 degrees C for flight muscles. To warm up, bees vibrate their flight muscles, generating heat without actually beating their wings. This process, called thermogenesis, raises their body temperature enough to fly. You might see bees on cool mornings basking in the sun, perched on flowers or leaves, soaking up warmth before they can become active. Once airborne, the act of flying generates additional heat, keeping them warm. But if the temperature drops suddenly, or if they're caught out in cool weather, bees can become stranded, too cold to fly home. This is one reason bees are more active on warm, sunny days. Cold weather limits their activity and can be deadly if they're caught away from the hive. Understanding their thermal needs helps explain why planting sunny spots in gardens is beneficial, and why bees cluster tightly in winter, pooling their collective warmth to survive the cold months. Winter bees live longer and have different physiology than summer bees. Not all worker bees live the same brief 5 to 6 weeks. Bees that emerge in late autumn are physiologically different and can live 5 to 6 months through the entire winter. These winter bees have larger bodies, more fat reserves, and higher levels of certain proteins. They don't forage. Instead, they remain in the hive, clustering around the queen and the remaining brood, vibrating to generate heat. The cluster contracts and expands as temperatures fluctuate, with bees on the cold outer edge gradually rotating inward to warm up, while those in the warm center move outward. This living furnace keeps the core temperature stable, protecting the queen and ensuring the colony's survival. Winter bees consume stored honey for energy, and their frugal metabolism allows them to last for months. As spring approaches and temperatures rise, they resume foraging, and their bodies wear out more quickly. They also begin raising the first generation of spring bees, who will be short-lived summer workers. The transition from winter bees to summer bees marks the renewal of the colony's annual cycle, a changing of the guard that happens invisibly inside the hive as the seasons turn. Bees have specialized mouth parts adapted for different foods. A bee's mouth is a marvel of adaptation. She has mandibles, jaw-like structures used for chewing, manipulating wax, grooming, and defense. But for feeding, she uses her proboscis, a straw-like tongue that can extend and retract. The proboscis is formed by two maxillae that zip together to create a tube. When feeding on nectar, the bee extends her proboscis deep into a flower, lapping up the sweet liquid. The proboscis can reach into narrow floral tubes that other insects cannot access. When not in use, it folds neatly under the head. Different bee species have proboscises of varying lengths, adapted to the flowers they prefer. Short-tongued bees visit shallow flowers, while long-tongued bees access deep tubular blooms. Bees also use their mouth parts to manipulate pollen, mixing it with nectar and saliva to form the pollen balls they carry on their legs. They drink water by lapping it up, and they feed each other through trophallaxis, mouth-to-mouth transfers of food. The bee's mouth is a versatile tool, capable of construction, defense, feeding, and social interaction. A tiny Swiss Army knife of structures enabling her diverse activities. Bees exhibit a foraging preference phenomenon called flower constancy. When a bee forages, she could theoretically visit any flower, but bees typically exhibit flower constancy, tending to visit the same species of flower repeatedly during a single foraging trip. If she starts her trip visiting clover, she'll likely continue visiting clover, passing by other attractive flowers. This behavior benefits both bee and plant. For the bee, it's efficient. She becomes skilled at handling a particular flower type, learning the best approach, where the nectar is, how to manipulate the petals. This speeds up her foraging. For the plant, flower constancy increases the chances of successful pollination. Pollen carried from one clover flower is likely to be delivered to another clover flower, not wasted on a different species where it won't be useful. This mutualism has driven coevolution between bees and flowers. Plants have evolved traits that encourage fidelity, rewarding consistent visitors with more nectar or better pollen. Bees, in turn, have evolved learning abilities that allow them to specialize temporarily on the most rewarding flowers. Flower constancy turns each foraging bee into a dedicated courier for specific plant species, ensuring the reproductive success of both partners in this ancient relationship. Propolis has antibacterial and antifungal properties beneficial to the hive. Propolis is more than just a sealant. Its antimicrobial properties make it a critical component of hive health. Studies have shown that propolis kills or inhibits a wide range of bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Bees line the interior walls of the hive with a thin layer of propolis, creating what scientists call a propolis envelope. This envelope acts as an antimicrobial barrier, reducing the pathogen load inside the hive. When invaders like mice or beetles enter the hive and die, bees cannot always remove the large corpse. Instead, they entomb it in propolis, mummifying it and preventing decomposition and the spread of bacteria. This behavior, called mummification, was noted by ancient observers. The propolis seals the body, and its antimicrobial properties prevent it from becoming a source of disease. Researchers have found that colonies with high propolis use have stronger immune responses and lower disease rates. The bee's instinct to collect and apply propolis is a form of social immunity, a collective health behavior that protects the whole colony. This natural antiseptic, crafted from tree resins, represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement, a chemical defense system co-opted from plants to safeguard the hive. Bees have been symbols in art, literature, and mythology for millennia. Bees have buzzed through human imagination for as long as we've recorded our stories. In ancient Egypt, the bee symbolized the soul and resurrection. In Greek myths, bees were linked to the goddess Artemis and were thought to be the souls of priestesses. Plato described the souls of sober and righteous men reincarnating as bees. In Celtic traditions, bees were messengers between worlds, connecting the earthly realm to the spiritual realm. The Bible contains numerous references to bees and honey, often as symbols of abundance and wisdom. The Quran mentions bees as creatures that follow God's inspiration. In heraldry, bees represent industry and cooperation, appearing on coats of arms and flags. Napoleon Bonaparte chose the bee as his emblem, seeing it as representing immortality and resurrection, deliberately connecting himself to ancient French dynasties that used the bee. In literature, bees appear in works from Virgil's Georgics to Shakespeare's plays, to Emily Dickinson's poems, to Sylvia Plath's haunting verses. Artists have depicted bees in paintings, sculpture, and architecture for thousands of years. The bee is a universal symbol, transcending cultures and eras, representing diligence, community, sweetness, and the mysteries of nature. Bees can count and understand the concept of zero. It might seem impossible, but bees can count and they understand zero. Researchers trained honeybees to choose the image with fewer objects to receive a reward. The bees could distinguish between 1, 2, 3, and 4 objects with high accuracy. Remarkably, when presented with a choice between 1 object and 0 objects, an empty display, the bees correctly identified 0 as representing a smaller quantity. This suggests bees grasp the abstract concept of 0, the absence of quantity, something humans don't fully understand until around age 4. Bees join a small group of animals capable of understanding 0, including primates, parrots, and crows. This cognitive ability is impressive given the size of the bee brain. It shows that numerical concepts don't necessarily require a large brain or complex neural structures. Instead, they can emerge from efficient neural networks. What bees use this counting ability for in nature isn't entirely clear, but it might help them track resources, estimate distances, or make other survival-related calculations. The fact that bees can count challenges our assumptions about intelligence and cognition, showing that tiny creatures can grasp concepts we consider advanced. Pollen is collected in specialized structures called pollen baskets. If you look at a bee's hind legs, you might notice yellow or orange bundles attached to them. These are pollen loads, and they're carried in structures called corbiculae or pollen baskets. The pollen basket is a concave area on the outer surface of the tibia, the main segment of the hind leg, surrounded by long, stiff hairs that hold the pollen in place. As a bee gathers pollen by brushing against stamens, grains stick to the branched hairs covering her body. She uses her legs to scrape the pollen forward, mixing it with a bit of nectar or saliva to make it sticky and moldable. Then, using specialized combs and brushes on her legs, she packs the pollen into the baskets. Each bee develops an efficient grooming routine performed even while flying between flowers. The final pollen loads can be huge, sometimes nearly the size of the bee's leg herself, and brilliantly colored depending on the flower source. Bright yellow from dandelions, deep orange from poppies, pale cream from apple blossoms. Watching a bee land with full pollen baskets is to witness the fruits of her labor, tiny treasure troves of protein and fat that will feed the developing larvae back in the hive. Male bees or drones have no stingers and cannot sting. One of the surprising facts about bees is that male bees cannot sting. The stinger is a modified ovipositor, an egg-laying organ, which means only females possess it. Drones, being male, lack this structure entirely. They have no stinger, no venom, and no ability to defend themselves in that way. This makes drones completely harmless to humans. They're also easy to identify. Drones are larger and bulkier than workers, with bigger eyes that meet at the top of their heads. Their purpose is purely reproductive. They don't forage, don't build comb, and don't care for brood. They eat food provided by workers, fly out to drone congregation areas hopping to mate, and return to the hive to rest. From an evolutionary perspective, their lack of a stinger makes sense. They're not involved in hive defense or foraging, so they don't need defensive weapons. Their energy and resources are devoted entirely to reproduction. Understanding that drones cannot sting helps to demystify bees. Half the bees you might encounter, if they're large and buzzing lazily around, are males who pose no threat whatsoever. The fear of bees often stems from misunderstanding. Knowing who can and cannot sting helps to ease that fear. Queen bees can control the sex of their offspring. When a queen bee lays an egg, she has a remarkable ability. She can decide whether that egg will develop into a male or a female. Female bees, workers and queens, are diploid, meaning they have two sets of chromosomes. They develop from fertilized eggs. Male bees, drones, are haploid, with only one set of chromosomes, developing from unfertilized eggs. As the queen lays an egg, she controls whether to release sperm from her spermatheca, where millions of sperm from her mating flights are stored to fertilize it. Fertilized egg becomes female. Unfertilized egg becomes male. She uses this control to maintain the balance of the colony. During spring and summer, she lays mostly fertilized eggs, producing workers. When the colony needs males for reproduction, she lays unfertilized eggs in the larger drone cells. The workers provide cues about what the colony needs, building drone comb when they sense it's time to raise males. This sex determination system, called haplodiploidy, is unique and has important implications for bee social behavior and evolution. It means that sisters are more closely related to each other than mothers are to daughters, which some scientists believe favors the evolution of cooperation and altruism among workers. Bees have an exoskeleton that must be shed as they grow. Like all insects, bees have an external skeleton made of chitin, a tough, flexible material. This exoskeleton provides structure, protection, and attachment points for muscles, but it doesn't grow. As a larva develops, it must shed its exoskeleton multiple times in a process called molting. The larva grows inside her old exoskeleton until it becomes too tight. Then enzymes dissolve the inner layers, and the larva wriggles free, leaving behind a thin, translucent shell. Underneath is a new, larger, still soft. The larva expands quickly before the new skeleton hardens. Honeybee larvae molt 5 times before pupation. The final larval skin is shed as the larva transforms into a pupa, during which metamorphosis occurs. The pupal stage is when the body is dramatically reorganized, larval structures broken down, and adult structures like wings, legs, and compound eyes formed. When the transformation is complete, the adult bee chews through the wax cap of her cell and emerges. This process, from egg to larva to pupa to adult, takes about 21 days for workers, 24 for drones, and 16 for queens. The exoskeleton, while protective, constrains growth, making molting necessary, a vulnerable period where the developing bee is soft and exposed until her new armor hardens. Bees prefer certain colors, especially blues and purples, over others. Bees see the world in colors, but their color vision is shifted compared to ours. They cannot see red, which appears almost black to them, but they see ultraviolet light, which we cannot perceive. This means the color spectrum bees see is different, ranging from ultraviolet through blue, green, and into yellow. Reds appear dark or colorless to them. Research has shown that bees have strong preferences for certain colors, especially blues and purples. These colors strongly attract bees, probably because many bee-pollinated flowers are blue or purple. Yellows and whites are also attractive, while greens blend into the background of foliage, and reds are less visible. When planting a bee-friendly garden, choosing flowers in these colors can increase bee visits. However, it's not just color that matters. Flower shape, scent, and nectar quality are equally important. Many flowers have evolved to combine the right color signals with other cues that bees find irresistible. The partnership between bees and flowers is a conversation in color, scent, and taste. Each side speaking a language the other understands, refined over millions of years into one of nature's most elegant collaborations. Bees use the sun and polarized light to navigate even on cloudy days. Navigation for a bee is a complex task, and they've evolved multiple strategies to find their way. The primary compass is the sun. Bees have an internal circadian clock that tells them what time of day it is, and they know where the sun should be at that time. By comparing the sun's actual position with where it should be, they can determine compass direction. But what happens on cloudy days when the sun isn't visible? Bees can still navigate using polarized light. Sunlight becomes polarized as it passes through the atmosphere, creating patterns in the sky that are invisible to us, but clear to bees. Even when the sun is hidden behind clouds, these polarization patterns remain, like a celestial compass, always pointing the way. Bees have specialized photoreceptors in their compound eyes that detect the angle of polarization. By reading these patterns, they can orient themselves accurately. This dual navigation system, using both the sun's position and polarized light, makes bees remarkably skilled navigators. They rarely get lost, even in complex landscapes, and they can communicate locations to nest mates with precision. It's a testament to how evolution has equipped even small creatures with sophisticated tools to solve the challenges of their lives. Certain plants have co-evolved specifically with bees over millions of years. The relationship between bees and flowering plants is one of the most important partnerships in nature. Many plants have evolved traits specifically to attract bees and encourage them to be effective pollinators. Tubular flowers in blue or purple, rich in nectar, are classic bee flowers. Some plants bloom at times when bees are most active, ensuring their flowers get attention. Flower shapes have evolved to accommodate bee bodies, platforms for landing, guides pointing toward nectar, flower parts positioned to dust pollen onto specific parts of the bee's body. All these are adaptations shaped by bees. In return, bees have evolved traits to match the flowers. Tongue lengths suited to particular flower depths, sensory systems tuned to flower signals, even preferences and learning abilities that help them specialize. This coevolution has been occurring for over 100 million years, creating a tapestry of interdependence. Some plant species are so specialized that only one or a few bee species can pollinate them. The loss of those bees could mean extinction for the plants, and vice versa. This mutual dependence highlights the importance of preserving biodiversity. Each species, plant, or pollinator is part of an ancient partnership, and losing one thread can unravel the whole fabric. Beekeepers have practiced their craft for thousands of years. Humans have been keeping bees since ancient times. Evidence of beekeeping dates back at least 9,000 years, with cave paintings in Spain depicting honey gathering. The ancient Egyptians practiced advanced beekeeping, using cylindrical hives made from clay or straw. Honey and beeswax were valuable commodities, used in food, medicine, religious rituals, and mummification. The Greeks and Romans kept bees and wrote extensively about their behavior and management. Throughout the Middle Ages, monasteries were centers of beekeeping in Europe, producing honey and beeswax for candles and mead. Traditional beekeeping methods varied across cultures, from hollow log hives to woven skeps to clay pots. The modern movable frame hive, invented in the mid-1800s by Lorenzo Langstroth, revolutionized beekeeping by allowing inspection and manipulation of individual combs without destroying the hive. This innovation made beekeeping more humane and productive. Today, beekeeping is practiced worldwide, from hobbyists with a single hive in their backyard to commercial operations managing thousands of colonies. Despite technological advances, the fundamental relationship remains the same. Humans providing shelter and care, bees providing honey, wax, and pollination. A partnership thousands of years old and still thriving. Bees communicate the quality of food sources through dance intensity. The waggle dance doesn't just convey location, it also communicates quality. When a forager bee finds a particularly rich source of nectar or pollen, she returns to the hive and dances with more energy and enthusiasm. Her dance lasts longer, and she performs more repetitions. She may even produce sounds during the dance by vibrating her wings. Other bees watching the dance can assess the quality of the food source based on these cues. An enthusiastic, vigorous dance says, "This source is excellent, abundant, high-quality nectar, worth the trip." A half-hearted, short dance suggests, "This source is okay, but nothing special." This allows the hive to allocate foragers efficiently, sending more bees to the best sources. It's a dynamic information system that responds to changing resources in real time. If a flower patch is heavily visited and starts to decline in quality, fewer bees will dance for it, and recruitment drops off. If a new, superior source appears, dancers promote it enthusiastically, and foragers flock there. The hive optimizes its foraging through this decentralized, democratic process, with each returning forager casting a vote through her dance. No central planner decides, yet the collective result is efficient resource exploitation. Honeybees produce brood pheromones that regulate colony behavior. It's not just the queen who communicates chemically. The developing brood, the larvae and pupae in their cells, also produce pheromones. These brood pheromones have wide-ranging effects on the colony. They inhibit ovary development in workers, reinforcing their sterility. They influence the tasks workers perform, drawing young workers to brood care duties. They help stabilize the colony's social structure. Brood pheromones also affect foraging, signaling to the colony how much brood is present and what resources are needed. A colony with lots of brood will have foragers focused on collecting pollen, which is essential for larval nutrition. If brood levels drop, pollen collection decreases and nectar collection increases as the colony shifts toward honey storage. The brood is essentially communicating its needs chemically, and the colony responds. This creates a feedback loop. The health and quantity of the brood shape the behavior of the workers, and the workers' behavior ensures the brood gets what it needs. It's a self-regulating system driven by chemical signals that flow throughout the hive, maintaining balance and adapting to changing internal and external conditions. The hive is not just individuals, but a superorganism with chemical hormones coordinating its many parts. Bees can suffer from various diseases, including American foulbrood and nosema. Like all living creatures, bees are vulnerable to diseases. Some of the most serious are bacterial and fungal infections. American foulbrood is a deadly bacterial disease that infects larvae, turning them into a sticky, foul-smelling mess. It's highly contagious and can destroy entire colonies. European foulbrood is another bacterial disease affecting larvae, though usually less severe. Nosema is caused by fungal-like microsporidia that infect the bee's gut, leading to digestive problems, weakened bees, and reduced colony health. Chalkbrood and stonebrood are fungal diseases that turn larvae hard and chalky or stone-like. Viruses are also a major concern, often spread by varroa mites. Deformed wing virus, for example, causes bees to emerge with crumpled, useless wings, dooming them to a flightless, short life. Many of these diseases are difficult to treat, especially in wild colonies. Beekeepers must constantly monitor for signs of disease and take preventive measures. Maintaining strong, healthy colonies with good genetics, adequate nutrition, and low parasite loads is the best defense. The diseases bees face are a reminder of the fragility of these small lives. Despite their resilience and complex societies, bees are vulnerable creatures dependent on a delicate balance of health factors to survive. Bees have a short lifespan, but colonies can live for many years. An individual bee's life is brief. A summer worker lives only about 5 to 6 weeks. A drone might live a few months if he doesn't mate. Even winter bees, who can survive 5 to 6 months, are short-lived compared to many animals. But the colony as a whole can live for decades. As long as the queen is healthy and laying eggs, as long as there are enough resources, and the colony can replace its dying members, it continues. Some managed hives have persisted for decades with careful beekeeping. Though in the wild, colonies often face challenges that shorten their lifespan. The queen herself can live 3 to 5 years, though her productivity declines with age. When she finally fails, the colony raises a new queen, and the colony continues without interruption. In this way, the colony transcends the individual. Each bee is a temporary part of a larger, longer-lived entity. The colony has a kind of immortality, constantly renewing itself, cycling through generations of workers, while maintaining its identity, its home, and its stores. This perspective shifts how we think about bees. The individual is ephemeral, the collective endures, a living thread stretching through time. Bees adjust the cell size in their comb for different purposes. When bees build comb, they don't create uniform cells. They adjust the size based on intended use. Worker brood cells are smaller, about 5.2 macross. Drone cells are larger, around 6.4. Honey storage cells can be even larger. Bees also build transitional areas where cell size gradually changes, blending zones seamlessly. Queen cells are entirely different, large, peanut-shaped cells that hang vertically from the comb. This flexibility shows that bees are actively managing their architecture based on the colony's needs. In spring, when the colony is expanding, workers build more worker brood cells. When they sense it's time to raise drones, they build larger drone comb. If the colony needs more honey storage, cells are built larger and deeper. The size differences might seem small, but they matter greatly to the developing bees. A fertilized egg placed in a worker cell develops into a worker. The same egg in a larger drone cell would not develop properly. The comb is not just a structure, but a highly functional, adaptable system. Every cell is purpose-built, sized, and positioned to meet specific needs, demonstrating once again the bees' extraordinary instincts and precision. Bees can be trained to detect certain scents for search and rescue. Bees' incredible olfactory abilities have led researchers to train them to detect specific scents beyond flowers. Using classical conditioning, bees can associate any scent with a reward of sugar water. After just a few training sessions, bees will extend their proboscis, their feeding tongue, when they smell the trained scent, even without a reward present. This conditioned response can be used to detect a wide range of smells. Researchers have trained bees to detect explosives, drugs, toxic chemicals, and even medical conditions. Some studies have explored using bees to detect diseases like cancer through the scent of breath samples. Others have trained bees to find bodies or locate disaster survivors by smell. Bees can detect odors at extremely low concentrations, sometimes parts per trillion, making them highly sensitive instruments. While practical deployment of bees for these purposes has challenges, the research demonstrates their remarkable capabilities. Bees, often underestimated as simple insects, possess sensory abilities that rival or exceed sophisticated human technology. Their noses are miracles of biological engineering, tuned over millions of years to detect the faintest chemical signals in a complex world. Climate change affects bee populations and their flowering resources. As global temperatures rise and weather patterns shift, bees face new challenges. Climate change alters the timing of flower blooms. Many plants are flowering earlier in spring due to warmer temperatures. If bees don't emerge at the same time, there's a mismatch. Bees might emerge to find flowers already faded, or flowers might bloom before their pollinators are active. This phenological mismatch can harm both plants and bees. Extreme weather events, heat waves, droughts, floods also affect bees. Droughts reduce flower abundance and nectar production. Excessive heat can make foraging dangerous or impossible. Habitat changes as climates shift and ecosystems transition can push plants and their pollinators out of sync or out of their historical ranges. Some bee species are already showing range shifts, moving northward or to higher elevations, seeking cooler conditions. Others face population declines as their habitats become unsuitable. Climate change adds another layer of stress on top of pesticides, diseases, and habitat loss. Addressing it requires global action, but individuals can help by creating resilient habitats, planting diverse native species, and supporting conservation efforts. Bees are sensitive indicators of environmental health. Their struggles signal broader ecological disruptions that ultimately affect us all. Bees have evolved alongside flowers for 100 million years. The story of bees and flowers is a story of mutual evolution spanning an almost incomprehensible length of time. Around 100 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, flowering plants began to diversify. Before this, the world was dominated by conifers, ferns, and other non-flowering plants. Insects, including early bees evolving from wasp ancestors, began visiting these new flowers for food. Over time, plants that attracted insect pollinators had a reproductive advantage. They evolved colors, scents, nectar, and shapes that appealed to their visitors. Insects that were efficient at gathering food from these flowers thrived, and they evolved specialized mouthparts, sensory abilities, and behaviors. This feedback loop drove rapid diversification on both sides. Today, there are hundreds of thousands of flowering plant species and tens of thousands of bee species, each shaped by the other. This coevolution is one of the great success stories of life on Earth. It has produced the incredible diversity we see in meadows, forests, and gardens. The color of every flower, every bee's behavior, is a chapter in this shared history, a testament to the creative power of evolution working through partnership and cooperation. Wax moths are pests that infest hives and consume comb. Not all creatures that interact with bees are beneficial. The wax moth, particularly the greater wax moth, is a serious pest of honeybee colonies. The adult moths are drab gray insects that infiltrate hives, especially weak or struggling colonies. Female moths lay eggs in cracks and crevices inside the hive. When the larvae hatch, they tunnel through the comb, eating wax, pollen, and even bee larvae. They leave behind silken tunnels and frass, which is excrement that webs together the comb and destroys its structure. A heavy infestation can devastate a colony, rendering the comb unusable and forcing the bees to abandon their home. Strong colonies with vigilant guard bees can usually defend against wax moths. Workers patrol the hive, removing eggs and larvae before they cause damage. But weak colonies, those stressed by disease, starvation, or queenlessness, are vulnerable. Wax moths are nature's recyclers, breaking down old comb in abandoned hives and returning nutrients to the ecosystem. But in a living hive, they're a destructive force. Beekeepers must monitor for wax moths and help colonies stay strong enough to resist them. The battle between bees and wax moths is another reminder that life in the hive isn't idyllic, but a constant struggle for survival. Some bees can generate heat to kill invading hornets. Honeybees, though they seem defenseless against larger predators, have evolved a remarkable defense strategy against hornets. In Asia, where giant hornets sometimes attack honeybee hives, the native Asian honeybees have developed a heat-balling response. When a hornet scout enters the hive, hundreds of bees swarm over it, forming a tight ball. They then vibrate their flight muscles intensely, generating heat. The temperature inside the ball rises to around 46 to 47 degrees C, just below the bee's lethal limit, but above the hornet's. The hornet is essentially cooked to death, while the bees, though stressed, survive. This behavior requires precise coordination and tolerance to heat. Western honeybees, which did not evolve with giant hornets, lack this behavior and are much more vulnerable to hornet attacks. The heat-balling strategy is a stunning example of collective defense, where the many work together to defeat a much larger, more powerful individual enemy. It's also a reminder that bees, for all their apparent fragility, are fighters. They've survived for millions of years in a world full of predators, parasites, and threats by evolving clever, cooperative strategies. Their small size hides tremendous resilience and ingenuity. Bees help create biodiversity hotspots through their pollination. When bees pollinate wildflowers, they don't just help individual plants reproduce. They shape entire ecosystems. Plants that are successfully pollinated produce seeds and fruits, which provide food and habitat for countless other organisms. These plants create habitat, shelter, and nesting sites. When plant diversity is high, supported by effective pollination, the entire ecosystem becomes richer. More plant species support more herbivore species, which support more predator species. This cascade of diversity creates biodiversity hotspots, regions teeming with varied life forms. Bees are keystone species in many ecosystems, meaning their presence supports a disproportionate amount of diversity. Remove the bees and the plants decline, which causes herbivores to decline, which affects predators, and the whole system unravels. Studies have shown that in areas where pollinators are abundant, plant reproduction is higher, genetic diversity within plant populations is greater, and overall ecosystem health is stronger. The humble bee, moving from flower to flower in her daily routine, maintains the fabric of life itself, weaving connections between species, sustaining biodiversity, and keeping ecosystems resilient and vibrant. Her work is invisible but foundational. Protecting bees means protecting the ecosystems we all depend on. Honey ferments into mead, one of humanity's oldest alcoholic beverages. Honey's sweetness made it precious in ancient times, but humans also discovered that honey, mixed with water and left to ferment, produces an alcoholic drink called mead. Mead is thought to be one of the oldest alcoholic beverages, possibly predating beer and wine. Archaeological evidence suggests mead was consumed in China over 9,000 years ago. and it appears in ancient texts from Egypt, Greece, Rome, and across Europe. Fermentation occurs when wild yeasts consume the sugars in honey, producing alcohol and carbon dioxide. The process is simple, but requires patience. Mead can be dry or sweet, still or sparkling, and can be flavored with fruits, spices, or herbs. It was particularly important in Northern Europe, where grapes for wine were scarce and honey was abundant. Mead features in Norse mythology, Celtic legends, and medieval feasts. It was believed to have magical properties, conferring strength, wisdom, or longevity. Today, mead is experiencing a resurgence among craft beverage enthusiasts. The link between bees and human culture extends even to our celebrations and rituals, where the sweetness bees create is transformed into another kind of joy, shared among friends and communities through the ages. Bee populations are monitored to track environmental health. Bees serve as important bioindicators, meaning their health reflects the health of the environment. Scientists monitor bee populations, diversity, and behavior to assess ecosystem conditions. Declining bee numbers can signal problems like pesticide contamination, habitat degradation, climate impacts, or disease outbreaks. Because bees are so widespread and interact with so many plant species, they provide a window into the state of entire landscapes. Some monitoring programs involve counting bees, identifying species, and tracking their abundance over time. Others examine hive health, testing for pesticides, pathogens, and nutritional deficiencies. Citizen science projects engage the public in bee monitoring, with volunteers recording sightings, photographing bees, and contributing data to large-scale databases. This collective effort helps scientists understand trends and identify areas needing conservation. When bee populations decline, it's a warning. It tells us that something is wrong, not just for bees, but potentially for the broader environment. Paying attention to bees, supporting their populations, and addressing the threats they face is not just about saving bees. It's about maintaining the health of the ecosystems we all depend on. Bees are messengers, and we would do well to listen to what their struggles are telling us. Bees produce sounds that can be recorded and analyzed. The hive is not silent. It hums, buzzes, and vibrates with sound, much of it meaningful communication. Researchers have recorded these sounds and analyzed them to understand bee behavior. The sounds vary in frequency, amplitude, and pattern, conveying different messages. The piping of a virgin queen, a sharp, high tone, signals her presence to workers and rival queens. Worker bees also produce a variety of hums, buzzes, and vibrations that convey information. The stop signal is a brief vibrational pulse that tells a dancing bee to stop. Buzz pollination, used by bumblebees and other bees, is a loud, low-frequency vibration that shakes pollen loose from flowers. Researchers have recorded and analyzed these sounds, finding that they carry surprisingly detailed information. The frequency, duration, and pattern of vibrations can indicate a bee's state, her intentions, or convey specific messages. The hive is a symphony of subtle sounds, a constant hum and vibration that the bees use to coordinate their complex society. Listening to bees, truly listening, opens another window into their hidden world, revealing the subtle symphony that plays out every day inside the colony. Urban beekeeping brings bees into cities and raises awareness. In recent years, beekeeping has found a new home in cities. Urban beekeepers keep hives on rooftops, in community gardens, and even on balconies. Cities can actually be good habitats for bees. Urban gardens, parks, and landscaping provide diverse flowers that bloom over long seasons. Pesticide use is often lower in cities than in agricultural areas. The urban heat island effect can extend the foraging season. Many urban beekeepers are motivated not just by honey, but by education and conservation. They give workshops, host hive tour, and teach people about bees and pollination. This raises awareness about the importance of bees and encourages bee-friendly practices like planting native flowers and avoiding pesticides. Urban beekeeping also reconnects people with nature and food production, reminding city dwellers that even in concrete jungles, wild processes continue. There are challenges, of course. Urban hives must be managed carefully to avoid conflicts with neighbors. But done responsibly, urban beekeeping enriches communities, supports local ecosystems, and brings the gentle hum of bees back into spaces where they've been absent for generations. Bees may experience something like emotions or subjective states. Do bees have emotions? It's a difficult question, but recent research suggests they might experience something like subjective states. Studies have shown that bees can exhibit behaviors that look like optimism or pessimism. When bees are subjected to stressful conditions, like vigorous shaking, they behave more cautiously afterward, making choices that suggest they're expecting negative outcomes. This has been interpreted as a pessimistic state, somewhat analogous to anxiety. Conversely, bees given unexpected rewards display behavior suggesting positive emotional states. They're more likely to explore and take risks. These findings don't prove that bees have emotions as we experience them, but they suggest that bees have internal states that affect their decisions, something more complex than simple stimulus response mechanisms. If bees do have experiences, even rudimentary ones, it deepens our ethical responsibility toward them. It means they're not just biological robots, but creatures with some form of inner life. Recognizing this changes how we think about bees and how we treat them. They deserve not just protection for their ecological services, but consideration as beings that might, in their own way, experience the world. The study of bees has contributed to fields like mathematics and computer science. Bees have inspired research far beyond biology. Mathematicians have studied the hexagonal structure of honeycomb, proving that it's the most efficient way to divide space with minimal material, a problem that took centuries to solve rigorously. The waggle dance has inspired algorithms in computer science, particularly swarm intelligence and optimization problems. These bee-inspired algorithms help solve complex problems like routing delivery trucks, managing telecommunications networks, or optimizing industrial processes. The collective decision-making of bee swarms has informed studies in artificial intelligence, robotics, and organizational theory. Engineers study bee flight to design better drones. Architects examine beehive ventilation and thermoregulation to create more efficient buildings. Bees, through their behaviors and structures, have become teachers across disciplines. They demonstrate solutions to problems that humans face, from resource allocation to construction to navigation. The tiny bee, working without awareness of mathematics or computer science, nevertheless embodies principles that these fields study. It's a humbling reminder that nature has been solving complex problems for millions of years, and by observing carefully, we can learn lessons applicable to our own challenges. Bees use landmarks and olfactory cues to remember locations. Navigation for a bee involves more than just sun compasses and polarized light. Bees also use landmarks and scents to find their way. As they fly to and from the hive, they memorize visual features of the landscape, distinctive trees, buildings, fences, patterns of light and shadow. They store mental maps of these landmarks. Experiments have shown that if familiar landmarks are moved, bees become disoriented. They rely on these visual cues to confirm they're on the right path. Bees also use olfactory landmarks. They can recognize scent plumes from flowers, which drift on the wind and guide them from a distance. The hive itself has a distinctive scent, and bees can smell their way home. Some species mark food sources or nest entrances with scent to help them relocate them. This multimodal navigation, combining sun position, polarized light, visual landmarks, and scents, makes bees incredibly effective navigators. They synthesize information from multiple senses, creating a rich understanding of their environment. It's a sophisticated system that allows a tiny insect to travel several kilometers from home, forage efficiently, and return safely day after day across complex and changing landscapes. Royal jelly has been used in traditional medicine for centuries. Royal jelly, the substance fed to queen larvae, has long fascinated humans. It's rich in proteins, lipids, vitamins, and bioactive compounds. Traditional Chinese medicine has used royal jelly for over 1,000 years, believing it promotes longevity, vitality, and health. In other cultures, it's been used for skin care, to boost immunity, and as a general tonic. Modern science has studied royal jelly's properties with mixed results. Some studies suggest it has antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial effects. Others find limited evidence for health benefits in humans. Royal jelly is expensive and remains a popular supplement despite scientific uncertainty. Whether or not it delivers the promised benefits, the fact that this bee-produced substance has captivated human interest for millennia speaks to our long relationship with bees. We've always sought to understand and use what bees create. honey for energy and preservation, wax for light and art, propolis for healing, and now royal jelly for health. Bees give us more than pollination. They give us materials that have woven themselves into human culture, medicine, and commerce throughout history. Bees have inspired philosophers and thinkers throughout history. Beyond practical uses, bees have inspired philosophical and ethical thought. Their cooperative societies have been held up as models of industry, harmony, and organization. Aristotle studied bees and wrote about their social structure. Virgil praised them in his poetry. Medieval monks saw in the hive a metaphor for Christian community. Enlightenment thinkers like Bernard Manville used bees to explore economics and morality in works like The Fable of the Bees, examining how individual actions contribute to collective prosperity. Bees have prompted questions about intelligence, consciousness, and the nature of society. How do they achieve such coordination without a ruler? What does their cooperation teach us about human societies? More recently, biologists studying bees have explored evolutionary questions about altruism, kin selection, and the origins of social behavior. Bees challenge us to think about intelligence beyond brains, communication beyond language, and organization beyond hierarchies. They show us that complexity can emerge from simplicity, that purpose can exist without consciousness, and that small creatures living brief lives can build something enduring and beautiful. In contemplating bees, we reflect on our own societies, our own place in nature, and the intricate web of life we're part of. Bees face threats, but conservation efforts offer hope. The challenges facing bees are significant, but there's reason for hope. Around the world, people are working to protect bees and their habitats. Conservation organizations advocate for pesticide restrictions, habitat protection, and sustainable farming practices. Researchers develop disease-resistant bee strains, study declining species, and search for solutions to threats like varroa mites. Farmers implement pollinator-friendly practices, planting wildflower margins, reducing pesticide use, and timing applications to minimize bee exposure. Gardeners and homeowners create bee habitats, plant native flowers, provide nesting sites, and avoid chemicals. Policy changes at local, national, and international levels protect pollinators. Some regions have banned harmful pesticides, established protected pollinator habitats, and funded research and conservation. Education programs teach the public about bees' importance, dispelling myths, and encouraging coexistence. Young people are especially engaged, seeing bees as symbols of environmental health and taking action to protect them. While bee populations still face serious threats, these collective efforts are making a difference. Some species are recovering. Awareness has never been higher. The future of bees depends on us, but the growing movement to protect them shows that people care and are willing to act. Each bee is an individual with unique experiences. It's easy to think of bees as interchangeable parts of a collective, but each bee is an individual. She has her own lifespan, her own experiences, her own memories. Some bees are bolder, more willing to explore new flowers. Others are more cautious. Some are fast learners. Research shows personality differences among bees, individual variation in temperament and behavior. A forager bee's final flight, the one from which she doesn't return, is unique to her. Maybe she was caught by a bird, exhausted after a long flight, or simply worn out after weeks of labor. Each bee lives her one life, fleeting and small, yet complete. She knows the warmth of the sun, the scent of flowers, the hum of her sister's wings. She tastes sweetness, feels the wind, navigates by stars of polarized light. For a brief moment, she exists, conscious or not in the way we define it, but present, alive, part of the world. To watch a single bee and recognize her individuality is to see her not as a unit of a hive, but as a bee with her own story, however brief. It's a perspective that deepens our respect and our care. The sound of bees is a symbol of summer and life. There are few sounds as evocative as the soft hum of bees on a warm summer day. It's a sound that signals warmth, growth, abundance, gardens full of flowers, fruit ripening on trees, long days and golden light. The hum of bees is the soundtrack of summer, a gentle reminder that life is flourishing. For many, it's a comforting sound associated with childhood, with lazy afternoons, with the peace of a garden in bloom. To lie in the grass and listen to bees working nearby is to feel connected to something timeless. The sound has been heard by every generation of humans, unchanged across millennia. It's a sound that predates us and will, we hope, continue long after we're gone. In the hum of bees, there is continuity, a link to the past and the future. It reminds us that life goes on, that nature persists, that the small, often overlooked creatures are doing their essential work. That sound, so easily ignored in our busy lives, carries within it the promise of renewal, of seasons turning, of ecosystems functioning, of life sustaining itself through countless small actions repeated endlessly. In the quiet of a garden, bees teach us to slow down. To truly appreciate bees, you must slow down. Sit still in a garden, watch and wait. A bee arrives at a flower, lands delicately, and begins her work. She's utterly focused, present in the moment. She doesn't rush. She methodically explores the flower, extracting what she needs. Then she lifts off, hovers, and moves to the next bloom. There's a rhythm to her work, unhurried yet purposeful. In watching her, you're invited into her pace, her focus. The world narrows to this flower, this bee, this moment. Worries fade, time stretches. You notice details, the pollen dusting her legs, the translucence of her wings, the precision of her movements. You hear the hum, feel the warmth of the sun, smell the flowers. You become present. In our fast-paced, distracted world, bees offer a gentle lesson in mindfulness. They remind us that important work doesn't require haste, that there's grace in repetition, that life is built from small, careful actions accumulated over time. Watching bees, we remember how to be still, how to observe, and how to simply be in the presence of other living things, sharing a moment of sunlight and blooms. And so, dear listener, we come to rest. Our journey through the world of bees has taken us from the architecture of honeycomb to the chemistry of royal jelly, from ancient cave paintings to modern conservation efforts, from the dance floor of the hive to the colorful meadow where bees and flowers meet. We've explored the brevity of a single bee's life and the enduring legacy of the colony. We've marveled at navigation skills, communication systems, and social structures that rival our own in complexity. We've seen how bees shape ecosystems, support agriculture, and inspire human culture and science. But beyond all these facts and wonders, there is something simpler and deeper. Bees remind us of our connection to nature. They show us that we're not separate from the natural world, but part of it, dependent on the same flowers, the same sun, the same cycles of seasons. They teach us humility, showing that tiny creatures with grass seed-sized brains can accomplish things we barely understand. They demonstrate cooperation, the power of many individuals working together toward a common good. And they offer hope because in caring for bees, in planting flowers and creating habitat, we can make a difference, contributing to something larger than ourselves. As you rest now, imagine a warm summer meadow. Wildflowers sway gently in a soft breeze. The air smells of grass and blossoms. Above, the sky is blue and endless, and all around, barely audible, is the quiet hum of bees. They move from flower to flower in their ancient pattern, carrying out work that has sustained life for 100 million years. The sound is peaceful, reassuring, timeless. It's the sound of life renewing itself, of nature's patient persistence, of small efforts adding up to something magnificent. Let that sound carry you now into rest, into dreams, into the quiet spaces where worry fades and peace remains. The bees will still be there tomorrow working under the sun, gathering sweetness from the world, reminding us of the small essential acts that hold everything together. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift into sleep, into stillness, surrounded by the gentle hum of bees and the warm glow of summer light. Good night.